whole lot of this stuff.
Well, I think now
Enough room.
it would now it would still be okay as a right with the research plus. No,
I've got the,
there's
here.
not very many that can do it, and I think I don't even. I think that's no Robert.
I gotta remember the dates.
That's why.
Yeah, you were there March 1st, and yes, that's the date you were
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Okay, we're going to call things to order.
Diana?
You ready there, Mr. Kelly?
So the stairs here, guys, want to come in?
Anyways, just before we start, I want to make a couple of comments. March 1st, on Sunday, I was at the Guild to watch Shrek, production put on by the Musical Theatre School, correct, Councillor Yanka?
Yep, by the Guild Musical Theatre School, yep.
Guild Musical Theatre School. It was an excellent show, and the young performers representing all parts of Charlottetown and the region or capital area. Excellent show. So I want to give a big shout out to them. But there's another group, the Linkletters. Lori, who is the executive director or artistic director.
She's our artistic director.
And I noticed her dad, Graham, was there in support, and so was her mother.
Yeah.
Kay. So the family Linkletter really put on an excellent show that took place last Sunday at the Guild. And another area that I would like to address, I would like to begin this evening with a few comments around things happening in the month of March. The Epilepsy Association of the Maritimes, EAM, would like to remind the public that March 26th is Purple Day in support of epilepsy awareness, and March is Epilepsy Awareness Month. Purple Day was founded 12 years ago by Cassidy Megan, a local 8-year-old girl who wanted one day of awareness every year for those who live with this very common neurological condition. On June 28th, 2012, the Government of Canada created the Purple Day Act, and it received royal assent, and March 26th is officially recognized as Purple Day in Canada. It is recognized in over 85 countries and on every continent in the world. In fact, Ricky Arnold, U.S. astronaut, celebrated Purple Day on the International Space Station with mission control in 2018. EAM provides an educational component that features seizure awareness and seizure first aid. This is provided to schools, teachers, bus drivers, and staff and employers, first responders, nursing homes, hospitals, small options, recreation groups, and community groups. The education piece provides a better understanding of this very common neurological condition and also what to do during a seizure and aftercare. I would like to thank EAM for all their advocacy. Also, March is Kidney Month, and that will take place Thursday, March 12th, 2020, is World Kidney Day. Each day, an average of 14 Canadians learn that their kidneys have failed, and their survival depends on dialysis treatments or the kidney transplant. There are currently over 110 people on Prince Edward Island receiving dialysis treatments 3 or more days a week. There are 6 patients on the transplant kidney list. In addition, 26 who are undergoing testing to determine if they are medically eligible to be placed on the transplant list, and 24 on a waiting list to be tested. In 2019, there were 8 transplants. And I know my wife, Lori, looked into being a transplant recipient. The process is almost a year. There's a lot of tests, physical and psychological, that are required to be part of a transplant for kidneys. The Kidney Foundation of Canada is the only national health charity serving the needs of people living with kidney disease through funding research, providing educational and emotional support programs, promoting access to high-quality health care, and actively promoting awareness of and commitment to kidney health and organ donation. Last year, the Kidney Foundation of Canada Atlantic Branch provided over $12,000 in financial assistance to to Islanders and their families with kidney disease. March is Kidney Month, and March 12th, 2020 is a World Kidney Day. The Foundation of Canada, Kidney Foundation of Canada, aims to raise awareness of the importance of our kidneys to our overall health, and to reduce the frequency and impact of kidney disease and its associated health problems. I urge all Charlottetown citizens to become aware of your own kidney health and learn about the role of your kidneys play in your body, and the kidney disease warnings signs to look for, as well as the awareness of organ donation registry. Thank you for that, Jay. That's very good background. So just keep those two important items in mind. Declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any? Yes, sir.
I'm planning a number 1 and 5.
Yes, you got that. That's a 9 Pine Drive. Okay. Approval of the agenda. I was approached by Councillor Tweel. He would like to move his up to the first report. He has to go somewhere, do you, Mr. Tweel?
Right, I have another commitment.
And under 6.1, Planning and Heritage, could you please just delete 6.13, which is a motion to move into closed session in regards to short-term rentals, STRs, and that will become the third item of the planning report. Correct, Councilor Rivera?
That is correct.
Okay. Made that change. Okay, so we have the adoption of the previous draft minutes. So we have the regular meeting of February 10th. That was chaired by the Deputy Mayor. Special meetings open, February 6th, 11, 19, 26, March 4th, 2020. And then we have the minutes from the planning public meeting, February 25th, that was held at the Charlottetown Hotel. Motion to move those minutes. Motion moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Ramsey. All those in favor? Contrary? Business arising. Look at all those minutes. Business arising.
Lots of.
No business? Okay. Okay, Councillor Tweel, you want to present your report first?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, members of City Council. As usual procedure, I'd like to start off with Volunteer of the Month as Chair of Parks, Recreation and Leisure Activities Committee. I am pleased to announce Mike O'Meara as the Volunteer of the Month for March. This gentleman has been involved with both the Charlottetown Minor Hockey Association and Speedskate PEI for the past number of years. In his role with the Charlottetown Minor Hockey Association, Mike is a coach with both a novice A team and Pee Wee AA team, AA. He helps to organize practices, plans tournaments, games, communication with the parents, places an emphasis on skill development, especially skating. Mike does also assist with the required planning with the Bantams AA team. With speed skating, Mike assists with skating at the younger age group in the Learn to Skate and Learn to Speed Skate programs. When Speed Skate PEI hosts the Atlantics skating, Mike can be found at the rink volunteering with the setup, timing, and counting. Overall, Mike said he enjoys seeing athletics developing skills, accomplishing new personal bests and new skills, growing confidence, and overall having fun. Please join with me in congratulating Mike for Volunteer of the Month. As you can recall, we had an out-of-town guest, a gentleman by the name of Steve McNeil. And Steve McNeil sent a correspondence to Christopher Drummond, who's in charge of programming. And I'd just like to read the letter that Steve penned to Christopher Drummond. Dear Chris, Steve McNeil, I want to thank you for all your help during the recent visit and the 19-hour, 26-minute skate for Alzheimer's in Charlottetown. We really appreciate the opportunity for Steve to skate overnight at the Founders Hall skating rink. He couldn't have done it without you taking an interest in the special events to raise awareness and funds for the Alzheimer's Society of Prince Edward Island. You were so helpful and friendly for the first time I spoke to you. I really appreciate it. You predicted that people would turn out, and they did. You mentioned that Islanders hockey team and the hockey players will be signing his hoodie. Even the RCMP stopped by to congratulate Steve personally. Founders Hall Rink is an amazing facility, and the staff were so helpful, very helpful. Steve skated from 5 p.m. February the 11th, 12/26 to February the 12th. It was snowing, but Steve loved it. 2 young women brought him a shovel. He has now completed his skates in 11 cities in 2020 and is thinking about next year. Thank you for making Charlottetown a memorable experience. Just to give you some background notes on Steve. Steve is a recreational referee in Toronto, Ontario, who skates for 19 hours and 26 minutes to raise awareness for funds for the local Alzheimer's societies in the province where he is skating. He skates in memory of his mother, who died from Alzheimer's. She was born in 1926, and hence the reason why he skates for that amount of time. On February the 11th at 5 p.m., Steve started his skates at Founders Hall outdoor rink and finished on February the 12th, 12:26 p.m. He completed 11 cities across Canada in the fall of 2019 and the winter of 2020. As Steve finished his skates in Charlottetown, he said if he had to sit down and come up with a preferred location to skate, that this rink would be it. Imagine, this rink would be it. We were criticized when we purchased that property down in front of Founders Hall, and it was probably one of the best investments that the previous councils ever made, and we always get great positive feedback on that facility, always.
Thank you.
Around 18 cups of coffee were delivered to Steve by the residents along with snacks such as chili, sports, drinks, and cookies. So we're gonna write Steve, and we certainly want him back.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have a
Pardon me?
motion? Do you have a motion or resolution?
On this particular issue? No, but we do have a resolution that bringing forward for City Council's consideration.
Okay.
And if there's any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions?
Your Worship, moved by Councilor Creel, seconded by Councilor Bernard, that the City of Charlottetown support its reinstallation of the low-profile modular composite docking system, excluding the small craft launch and accessible transfer station along the shoreline of Victoria Park for the 2020 season and for the future seasons, and that the mayor and CEO are hereby authorized to execute the standard contract agreements to implement this resolution, Your Worship.
Questions called? Question has been called? Okay. Go vote.
We're logged in. Yeah, we did.
I did.
Vote
Yeah.
again?
I'll log in again.
I think she has to reset it. You have to reset it.
Just a sec. Okay, vote.
No discussion.
Please vote again.
Ask any questions.
So everybody needs to vote again?
So we have 7-3.
Ramsey, Duffy, and McLeod. Ramsey, Duffy. Next, Worship.
Anything else there, Counselor? You're all done there, Counselor Wheel?
That's it.
Okay, we'll
Thank
go
you,
on to
Greg.
the planning report, but just before we do that, I just want to mention something about our esteemed Chair of Planning and Development. He finished his course at Dalhousie University, and it's a course in executive local government leadership.
It is.
Congratulations there,
Thank you.
Councilor Barrett. You want to take over with your report?
Thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate that. And the course is from Dalhousie, and it is for senior staff or counselors. And I just completed it. It was 16, 18 weeks, and I'd highly recommend it. It was a wonderful wonderful experience, and had a chance to work with CAOs across Canada, as well as other elected officials as part of the team. So it was certainly good to learn from other jurisdictions during this course as well. So anyways, a good course, and I'd recommend it for any counselor. With that, I also want to recognize Todd Saunders and Natalie Munn, their Heritage Department. The Heritage Awards were held last month. I thought they were a huge success. It was very well attended, and we received a lot of positive feedback from the public. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to them as well. And Your Worship, you were there. It was
Great day.
it was a good day.
Here-
Councillor Cody, you were there as well. Thank you. All right, I guess that is it for that. So, planning board minutes, we met on the March 2nd, Monday. The report and minutes are in your binder. The Heritage Board met on February 24th, 2020. Again, the minutes are in your binder. And the design review met on Thursday, February 20th. And of course, the minutes are in your binder. We have, I think, 8 resolutions for consideration tonight. And we're going to do something a little differently soon with Robert giving a presentation on short-term rentals. Robert's going to do that tonight. Yeah, yeah. So that's going to be a little different from the way we normally do things at council. So
Transparency and accountability.
you're right, Your Worship. So with that, I'll sit down. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions? Can you just change your buttons there? Councilor Pittman, good to go.
I can still.
Oh, okay, I got okay.
Thank you for your report, Councilor Rivard. I asked last week, or last month, about water runoff, and you said you were going to have a response.
Yep. Yep. Thank you, Councillor Twill. I did. I'll probably have to read some of this off because I did offer to send it to you, but I know that you wanted to discuss it here, so I didn't memorize this. But I got notes from Mr. Forbes, the manager of planning, and we talked about. I guess we talked about the water runoff last council meeting, and we talked about whose responsibility it was, be it the resident, be it the city, be it whoever. And again, the notes that I have here talks about the city introduced measures back in 2007 to include lot drainage plans to be filed and approved with the building permits for new buildings or additions to existing buildings. So anything prior to that, we didn't have an expectation from the applicant or the builder to have that in place. So again, with that in place now, it's we ask that the drainage plans be put in place, that there's no additional water runoff that affects adjacent properties or any properties. But prior to 2007, it wasn't there. And what do you? I can. Sure. Yeah. He wanted to discuss it tonight, so.
Is that all right? Okay, you don't mind, do you? Okay. Yeah, but you know what? If you want, don't get smart. All right. No, you know what, Philip? You know what? I'm trying to do my business here, and you keep taking cheap shots, and I'm sick and tired of it. Anyway, Councilor Rivard.
Yes.
That's not what I asked. What I asked was, it's in the report, or it's in the zoning and development bylaw, that water runoff cannot run off onto adjacent properties, adjacent property owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting concerns from residents across the city about water runoff onto adjacent properties, and the city's not enforcing the bylaw. That was the question. I already knew the preamble of what you already cited. Okay, I knew that. The question was, what are we doing to not only administer that section of the bylaw, but enforcing that section of the bylaw? Because residents don't feel confident when they contact the department, they're getting the answer that they want to get. And development's taking place, water's running off onto adjacent property owners, and they're frustrated. That was the question.
Councillor Twill, like I said, anything prior to any new construction that's being done now, there's a drainage requirement that has to go through plan. They have to stamp on stamp drawings and things of that nature that need to be approved prior to any kind of building. So you can't have runoff. Prior to 2007, that wasn't in place. So it's pretty hard to go back and determine, you know, if the water runoff from that property is indeed the cause of the water received, you know, in the adjacent property, or if I don't know, Mother Nature's changing. I mean, there's so many different circumstances. It's really hard for the city to prove without a late drainage plan in place to go back and say, is this the reason, right? And then, I don't know.
So, no, just 1 second, Councilor Tweed. Robert's Rules of Order, you've already asked two questions.
I'll send it to him, Your Worship. I'll send the
Send
information.
I didn't ask 2 questions.
Yes, you did. That made 2 points. We have to get moving on here.
Point of order, Your Worship.
No.
I didn't ask 2 questions.
Yes, you did.
What I
Twice.
asked
Pick it up
was-
twice, and you've
Oh, I didn't, Your Worship.
So-
Anyway, you're interfering with my
do we,
right to
do we have any more
represent my
questions?
constituents.
Do we have any more questions? Because he has to get on with his report. Okay, Greg, do you want to, Councilor Rivera, sorry, do you want to move your first?
Yeah,
I'm going to read these first, and then Robert will come up and do his presentation. Is that
sure.
okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
But we're doing,
We'll wait and do the.
we're not 9 Pine Drive first?
Oh, yeah. But we'll.
What's that?
We're gonna vote on these things first.
Yeah, I think we should vote on these.
We'll move we'll move the short-term rental thing till the end of the plan.
Yes.
That's
Correct.
after the presentation.
Correct.
Your Worship, moved by Councillor Barge, seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor Cody, that pursuant to bylaw 201812, bylaw code bylaw, the requirements of section 20 of the Planning Act RSPEI 1988 Cap P8, and the requirements of section 2.1 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw, council hereby appoints Robert Stafford as designate development officer, licensing inspector with the limited duties to administer provisions of the Zoning and Development Bylaw, such as the development permit approval related to decks, sheds, garages, demolitions, pools, tents, and some interior residential renovations permits. This designation of authority shall cease if the job duties of this employee no longer require the designation, or if the employee terminates employment with the city of Charlottetown upon further written notice, Your Worship.
Any questions? Question has been called. Please vote.
Your Worship, moved by Councillor Barge, seconded by Deputy Mayor Cody, that the request to amend Appendix A, future land use map of the official plan from low-density residential to medium-density.
Is this 9 Pine Drive? Counselor. Yeah. Thank you. Let's start over again.
Your Worship, moved by Councillor Barge, by Deputy Mayor Cody, that the request to amend Appendix A, future land use map of the official plan from low-density residential to medium-density residential located at 9 Pine Drive, PID 393322. Amend Appendix G, zoning map of the zoning development bylaw from the single detached residential R1L zone to the medium-density residential zone located at 9 Pine Drive, PID 393322. And consolidate 9 Pine Drive, PID 393322 with 11 to 13 Pine Drive, PID 393314, in order to construct a 41-unit apartment building on the consolidated property be rejected, Your Worship.
Okay, Councilor Barge, you're.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So last week we did receive a email from the applicant asking council tonight to defer the vote on this for 1 month until next council meeting, which is Monday, April. I can't even think of the date. Anyways, what is it?
Second Monday.
Yeah. And the reason they're asking for deferral is they want the opportunity to go back and talk to the residents in the area and try to address some of their concerns, and if there's a possible solution between the two parties that it can be had. So that's what they're asking. They're asking for a deferral for 1 month. If nothing changes, it would come back here for a vote next month on the same application. If there are amendments to the plan, then the applicant would have to withdraw the plans from council, and would have to then resubmit new plans. Hopefully, at that point, they would have, if they're able to reach some kind of agreement with the public, that it would be something that's agreed to by both parties. So that's what they're asking. So I'll put a motion on the floor myself to defer this for 1 month.
So movement, he's asking for a movement to defer, so he needs a second.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor. So we're speaking to now the deferral. Okay? Councilor.
question, Chairman Greg. I guess what I'm looking for is clarification on the procedure. As I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, and the solicitor sitting over in the corner, is that when you go to a public meeting, and when you host a public meeting, the requirement is it has to go to a vote. It has to go to a vote. You can't defer it, or you can't not deal with the issue. You've got to deal with the issue at hand, because the residents had come to a public meeting, they participated in the public consultation process, and once that process is completed, then it is required to go to council to vote either yay or nay. To vote yay or nay. So what I'd like is a legal opinion. I'd like.
Through the chair.
Okay, through the chair, but I'd like a clarification. If you can't give me a legal opinion, I'd like it from the solicitor, because I want to know that before I vote on the deferral.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Twill. Yeah, we can, as a council, can defer if council so chooses to do so. Again, if the applicant were wanting to withdraw the application, for instance, it would be up to council to vote to allow them to withdraw. We did it with, if I remember correctly, we did it on Sherwood Road with the asphalt plant. I think they asked back the first application. They asked her to withdraw. We allowed them to do so. Prior to council voting on it, council voted to allow them to remove it, so it's withdrawn. In this case, they're asking to defer it. There'll still be a yay or a nay vote if they can't work it out next month. So it will be voted on and closed.
It's not a legal question. What it is, you're just asking for a deferral to go back to.
It's the applicant's request was go to deferral so they can go back and talk to the public. Now, you're right. In the perfect world, this would have happened prior to the planning board meeting. This is when we would suggest that they do this. They didn't. But again, that's why it's at council tonight. Planning board could have made that decision back in, last week if that request came in prior to that Monday meeting, but it didn't.
Did you get legal opinion on it?
What's that?
Did you get a legal opinion?
Alex did talk to Mr. Hooley today, so I think it's.
The issue is, there is a special process if you want to, if they want to withdraw. And
It's not a withdraw though, it's deferral.
correct. That's the provision in bylaw. That is when you withdraw, you're locked out of the process for a year. Deferral does not defer deferral.
So you did get, okay, Councilor Ramsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Rivard. I'm in favor of for the whole deferral, but the thing that really frustrates me is that why can't these applicants deal with all these neighbors first, but then when they get all the other things going on, then they say, well, let's sort of defer it. But because at the same time, in my own personal opinion, is that I wish that people would talk to the residents first, before you go for an application. And I've been arguing about that for 5 years, and have the public know what's going on and whether they want it or not. And I think it will solve an awful lot of problems.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ramsey. There's nothing written in the process that requires them to do so. As chair of planning, I certainly encourage developers to air their dirty laundry, if you will, with the public prior to coming to council or having a public meeting in front of council. We've done it on Sandalwood Drive or Sandalwood Estates, and I remember that there's about 80 people show up to the meeting when the applicant was proposing their duplexes, and he was able to answer all their questions, or most of anyways, enough that when it came to a public meeting, only 5 people showed up. The Hampton Hotel was another one where they did their due diligence prior to, and I know there's other cases in the room here that it happened. The East Worthley Master Plan was another example where going out early was good. So I certainly echo your feelings on that, and wish developers to do that more. And I'll certainly encourage them from here on out, and every councillor can do the same.
So, I know that you gave me an answer, and then Mr. Forbes, manager of planning, tried to, I guess, echo what you said, but I would maybe have to go through you, but I would like to hear from the solicitor.
Yeah, no, it goes through the chair, right, Mr. Kelly?
That's all right,
And
Mr.
we already have a legal opinion. You want to get a legal opinion?
It doesn't-
I wanna hear from the
No,
solicitor.
it goes through the chair first.
Your Worship,
Did
it's
you want to get an opinion?
it's
Well, we'll get another opinion. Alex, you
Mr.
got one?
Forbes can answer
Mr.
that. That'd be great.
Forbes and Forbes. Give an opinion on it? We can defer?
which it does.
And the application staying on the table, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not tearing it up. Okay. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Rivard. I know the applicant asked for a deferral. Has there been an appetite on the residents and to meet again with the developer to see if they can come to some sort of compromise, or is that conversation over now?
Thank you, Councillor Cody. I guess you're referring to the emails that we received over the last couple of days from residents. The thing is, though, is that the public consultation piece, it is closed. So, for us to review that information is really not for us to determine. I mean, we're here to determine if there's going to be a deferral or not. The residents not wanting to, or whatever it may be, that's really between them and the developer. Those where the talks have to happen now, if that's what the deferral is for, to see if they can work out something in the middle. I mean, council's either faced right now with making a decision on the application as is, or allow the applicant to work with the public as much as possible. If nothing changes, then we're back here in 30 days to vote on the 41 unit. If there can be change, or there can be some kind of meet in the middle, find some common ground, then they'll make application to withdraw the application at that time and resubmit with I'm hoping some public buy-in. Yeah.
Just quick clarification. Yep, I will. Thank you. So if we vote tonight for a deferral, the solicitor said it has to come back here. The resolution has to come back for a vote. What happens if the developer, in the meantime, asks for a withdrawal? Is that allowed? How does that work? No. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor Yankoff. Yeah. So like I said, they'd have to come back here and request withdrawal, same as a request in a deferral. So council would have to either give them the permission to withdraw, and then they wouldn't have to. I don't believe they would have to wait that long period to resubmit. If council votes on this at any point, which would be next month, if there's no common ground found, because of the deferral, if it's approved, then they would have to wait a year before they make any other application on this property if it gets turned down.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just have a clarity question as well. So they meet, we vote to a deferral, they meet, there's a change in the application.
Yeah.
Does that go back to public consultation? Because for another public meeting to come back to planning, to come back to council?
Yes, the whole process would have to restart, is what it was. But again, if that were the case, I would hope that by giving them a month to be able to try to work this out, that common ground would be found, that if it did come back to council, a new application, that would be one that would have buy-in by both sides. Is the whole idea of why we would even entertain deferring this, is that we hope that there is common ground, because again, we have an R3 lot that allows for an apartment complex on it to begin with, as of right. And again, the R3 is not going away. We can't change as a council unless we get an application in from the owner of the property, which I don't think they're going to do. So we're going to keep coming back here and revisiting this every single year until, I don't know, until maybe someone approves it, or IRAC upholds, I don't know. But either way, I'm hoping, if it is deferred, that the two groups can get together and they can meet and figure out a solution. And that's my hope anyways. And if it can't be done, then we're back here to vote on the 41 unit, and we'll see where it goes. It's up to council if they want to defer. I'm just,
This is your third time, but you have to wrap it up. Because we
Just want to reiterate what Deputy Mayor Cody stated. In the correspondence and the emails, I tried to read all the emails. I don't know, there must be 75 of them. But in the emails, I think the person that had corresponded with the developer made it clear, crystal clear, that they weren't willing to have any further discussions, and that they wanted council to vote on the resolution. That's what I took from the emails that I read, and if I'm wrong, I stand to be corrected. But as I understand it, as far as dialogue or any discussions with the developer or representatives from the developer had basically come to an end. There wasn't much discussions, and that they wanted council to vote and vote opposed.
Just before
No,
you
can I just-
revert, do you know what the number of emails?
Yeah.
Alex? You
no,
have
I got it. So
What number is it?
what Councillor Tweel meant to say when he said 75 was 4.
How many?
4.
4 emails.
Yeah, so the number 75 that you mentioned was actually 4.
4 units.
So
Oh,
it was
no,
close.
All the different emails.
No, but you were talking about the recent asking us not to
No.
entertain this. We got 4. Anyways, listen, I'm not here advocating on behalf. I don't. If council decides not to defer it, then so be it. But again, we were asked to defer by the applicant to go back and talk. I think, to me, we'd be short-sighted as a council not to give the opportunity for 2 parties to work something out. And then instead of having this, whatever decision we make tonight, go to IRAC. Because IRAC's going to look at it and say, why didn't you do it? I'm saying give it a month, let them see if they can work it out. If they can't, then we'll be back in 30 days.
Councillor Carey,
I'll just finish it up. I mean, your worship, always asking for is deferral for 1 month. We have to vote on this sooner or later. They're asking for 1 month deferral to see if they can work it out. If the residents don't want it, it'll come back here, we have to vote on it. It's just postponed for a month until they have the conversation. So, not a big deal.
question call?
Question called.
So this is, just remember, this is on the deferral,
Correct.
okay? On the deferral. Councillor Duffy, are you, plugged in?
Yep.
Councillor Ramsey?
Yeah, we did, your worship.
I'll have Councillor Rivard.
Oh, I thought I pressed it.
Or Councillor McLeod.
Work that time?
All voted. They'll have to do it again, I think.
Technology, eh?
Yeah, modern day technology.
6-3.
Should we do it again, Cindy?
This is on the deferral. No, it's all right, it's through.
What's the vote?
6-3 for the deferral. Opposed. So opposed, Councilors Twill, McLeod, and Deputy Mayor Cody. And Councilor Duran is in conflict, so he's out here. Okay, you want to go to the next one, sir?
Yes, Your worship, moved by Councillor Rivera, seconded by Deputy Mayor Cody, that the request to increase the maximum building height from 49.2 feet to approximately 59 feet in order to construct a 38-unit apartment building at 132 St. Peters Road, PID 278168 be approved.
Yes, right.
Question?
Any questions on it?
Question called.
Question called?
Councillor Drawn. The worship, moved by Councillor Rivera, seconded by Deputy Mayor Cody, that the request for variance to reduce the minimum lot frontage, reduce the front yard setback, and reduce the setback for 4 side yards as attached in order to construct a 4-unit apartment dwelling on the vacant property located at 152 King Street, PID 336024 be approved, Your worship.
Question called.
Question was called?
Hey, I had my
Oh,
request to speak.
oh.
Oh, you don't, I didn't go back, sorry.
Cindy, you might have to.
I have 2.
repeat that.
Bernard also, Councilor Bernard? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
No, I just was signing off some
Because she said, "Hey."
resolutions. Councilor Yankoff, is this on planning number 3?
This is on King Street. Yep, thank you. Thank you for this. Councillor Rivard, are you able to explain to me or answer the question for me whether or not when this apartment building is built, I know that they're putting in a little bit of extra money so that they don't have to have the full amount of parking, is that correct? They're just paying for, they're having extra parking paid for, is that right? And then there's 2 spots to park, and then the other 2, they're doing the payment in lieu, is that right?
Thank you, Councilor Yeva. I haven't seen the application. They are required, I forget how many units this is, 4 units?
Yeah.
They'd be required, I think you had to have 4 parking spaces. Whatever they don't have, they would have to pay cash in lieu. There's no other choice. So it's in the 500 lot area, so that's the new rules.
Okay, and I just had one follow-up with that, if that's
Go right
correct.
ahead.
The part 2 to that was, is there anywhere in the application, have they confirmed that this is going to be for long-term tenants, or was that talked about? Thank you.
I don't think it was talked about, but we'll be soon bringing some regulations for short-term rentals, so maybe we'll hear what those might be before I might answer your question for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Worship. Just trying to find where I read it. Half the binder is planning this month, so they've been obviously busy.
80%.
But I'm sure I read somewhere where the fire escape would come down right on King Street. And I just want you to clarify. In the minutes, when they were talking about wanting the variances, they talked about the fire escape, and they said the fire escape would come down on King Street. And I'm just concerned, is it on the sidewalk? Is it close to the street? Does the plow end up giving a problem to the plow?
Thank you, Councillor Bernard. I'm assuming that it's coming the side, leading towards King Street. That's the exit point. If it does go on a city property, they need an encroachment agreement anyways through the planning board. So that's not been asked for. So I'm guessing there would be.
In the notes.
Yeah.
When it says it's right on King Street, it's not actually
I don't.
on King Street.
They can't put a fire escape right on city property
Right.
without any kind of permission from us. So that hasn't been granted here. This was all approved by Heritage Board as well, just for the design and look of it. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
A lot of checks and rechecks at Heritage Board.
There is 6 variances, Your Worship, are a lot to ask now. 4 of them being minimum, but where that is in town, it's a lot.
Question call? Question call. Going to vote? Councilor Bernard?
Just before I vote, I just found it here. It's in the attachment planning 3 where it says, subject to the fire escape, including the stairs being located entirely on 152 King Street.
Oh, Alex, can you?
Yeah, but on the house, that's the address.
Okay. Thank you.
Your Worship, moved by Councillor Bard, second by Councillor McCabe, that the request to increase the permanent residential density from 86 to 97 units, 11.34% variance, in order to construct a 5-story apartment dwelling with underground parking at 197 Minijane Drive, 469581 PID number, be approved.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not so much a question, Councillor Var, just some comments there. Since this application was revised to reduce the variance that was asked, because before that there's a petition and a lot of emails in here saying that the residents in the Chesapeake were opposed. I did speak to them after the revised plan came out, and some of the concerns are still on the table in terms of the amount of density on that property will increase the traffic, limit the amount of green space available to that area, and I guess at the end of the day, really what the neighboring property would like to see is just build what the developer's allowed to build. I think it's 86 units with the bonus density for the underground parking. So like I say, I do applaud the applicant for reducing the ask of the variance, but I guess in a perfect world, what he's allowed to build, if he was to build that would, I think that would satisfy the residents in Chesapeake. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cody. I believe that the footprint of the building is going from 6 floors, I believe, down to 5 floors as well, right? So it's not going to have the same height, so it won't be. So I guess the concession, where I would, because I will be supporting this, my argument would be the fact that they're reducing the height, so it's not going to be, from a massing perspective, it'll be pretty much on par with the existing building. It's going to be in an L shape, and when I look at some of the variances, they can be within 20 feet if they were to build as of right of the current location. They're actually building 79 feet from it, so there's some. I think there are some concessions. I get what you're saying, and I know that you're representing your constituents. I don't see this as myself as a bad, so we know it's 1-1. I believe that's their yeah.
If I could just get a little clarification here on the notes here. So the Planning and Heritage Department encourages,
No, that was after they came back.
oh, they came back, okay, so then down here in conclusion, so the Planning and Heritage Department encourages the planning board to recommend to council to reject the request,
The initial request.
the initial request. So where is the notes to where the recommendation, is this the new ones?
Is that right, Alex? The
It's an application, they had some fairly excessive variances. Staff, we're not prepared to support the variances, but we indicated that they had one of two options. They could either make the lot bigger, or they could do underground parking. So they didn't really want to do the underground parking, but they agreed to do the underground parking. They could get this bonusing for the underground parking. So there was a change at the planning board meeting back in where they reduced the variance significantly down, and staff supports that, with the underground parking, not something that the neighbors initially proposed.
notwithstanding. There's another conclusion.
Okay.
Find it there,
Notwithstanding,
Council.
staff would be in a position to support a variance. Okay. Okay, thank you for the clarification. It was just a bit wordy for me. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, question, no? Vote? Councilor Platt? Okay, wanna move the next one, please?
Your worship, moved by Councilor Brevard, second by Deputy Mayor Cody, that the request to obtain the site-specific exemption in the institutional zone of the zoning and development bylaw as per. Okay. Worship. Moved by Councilor Barrett, second by Deputy Mayor Cody, that the request to obtain a site-specific exemption in the institutional zone of the zoning development bylaw as pertains to 550 University Avenue, PID 373126, in order to allow the proposed 9-story, 35.4-meter residence to be constructed on the property which exceeds the maximum building height in the institutional zone, subject to the signing of the development agreement, be approved to proceed to public consultation. Your worship. Good news.
Question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I did hear you say good news. This is a great project. As you're aware, the Canada Games 2023 coming. This building is part of the I guess to be built for the residents of the athletes.
70 beds.
Correct. So I think it's a good considering that we have a bit of a housing crisis. I heard, anyways, and for not only residents of Charlottetown, but also students are finding it difficult. So this is going to be something that's good for the university and good for Charlottetown, and of course for Canada Games. So I'll be supporting this.
Cost of $60 million.
Yep.
Councilor Twill.
Thank you. No, thank you, Councilor Rivard, for bringing the resolution forward. As you know, we had a presentation, President Student Council, recently with another representative from UPEI Student Council. The question I have is, will this be, once this building is completed, will this be available for the students all year round? Will they have to vacate the premises so it becomes basically another motel, hotel situation? They were very concerned about Airbnbs here in the city of Charlottetown and housing for students off campus. But here we have a significant development on the campus of the University of Prince Edward Island being bought and paid for by the taxpayers. Do you know if it's going to be there for the students 365 days a year in terms of longevity for student housing?
Thank you, Councillor Twill. I'm not sure exactly the funding arrangement, but I'm assuming UPEI is kicking in a few dollars themselves. When it comes to to the use, I mean, that's up for UPI to decide, but my understanding is when the presentation was done that evening, that the students all they have to do is make application to the university if they want to stay for the summer in the dorms. So that's available to them at any time. Anything that remains vacant, the university does use for short-term rental. But again, keep in mind too that the money is used, help subsidize, I'm guessing, some of the programs and you know,
Offset expenses.
that's just my guess. I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the university, but I'm guessing that's why they do it. So again, it's available there to the students, is my understanding, if they make application. So it's not like they're evicting people or students that you don't want to stay for the summer.
Good point. Councilor Twill?
Thank you, Councilor Rivard. No, the reason why I asked that question, the presentation was made here about student housing off campus, and I asked if the president made a presentation to the Board of Governors regarding student housing on the campus. So maybe you can look into that a little further for me, because that gives me a level of comfort knowing that the students do have that option to stay there all year round and not have to move. So it's not becoming part and part, to use their words, hotel motel.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Twill. I know that the VP of UPI is in the crowd tonight, so I guess I can look at her, and if I'm wrong, she can shake her head no. But was I
Can't
right?
participate. I know she wants to.
I know, but
Can't.
but am I right? Or am I wrong? I'm correct. So, anyways, we can. Thank you.
Great.
And Councilor Rivard?
Yes.
This is going down the track with contractors, or the GC's already been hired. They're moving fast on this because I believe it has to be ready 1 year prior to the Canada Games. So I really appreciate that the university has taken this position to get this going.
And the planning staff are aware of that too, Your Worship, and we'll work very closely
Thank
with
you very much.
UPI.
Question called? So I guess get the boots on the ground, shovels in the ground, right there, Mr. Kelly? Okay.
Your worship, moved by Councillor Bard, second by Deputy Mayor Cody, that the proposed zoning development bylaw amendments to pertaining to the garden suites, mobile canteens, manufactured housing and residential zone, institutional zone, mixed-use corridor zone, light industrial zone, heavy industrial zone, business park industrial zone, parking space standards, and Appendix A definitions be approved to proceed to public consultation, Your worship.
Question? McLeod?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Rivard, for your report. Little concerned on the garden suites. We just recently reduced from half acre down to, now we're looking to go to 0.3 of an acre. My concern is, I mean, the folks that have a bigger lot in Charlottetown were probably those that have been existing for a while. And these folks have taken great care of their properties. They have privacy, they planted trees, they did whatever to make their spot a happy spot. So by limiting this down to a third, I feel that it's going to make things a little tight. Like if you build onto your home and it's a bad tenant, well then you just have to live with that and deal with it. But when you put a garden suite in the backyard that's 10 feet from 3 properties around you, then they're a bad neighbor. Now everyone's got to live with it. So I think by going down to 0.3 of an acre is asking people, you know, the privacy to be invaded. I think it's just going to make a can of worms in a neighborhood that's been, you know, used to having a nice yard, nice garden. And I know I'm speaking here tonight because at the public consultation where it's going, theoretically council is to listen and not to participate. So I just want to make sure the council is aware of that 0.3 of an acre, you know, that's getting down there, and it's going to start. I do know we need housing. I understand that. But it shouldn't be on the backs of people that have nice properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. It is to go to a public meeting, but I certainly wouldn't assume that these are going to be bad or they're going to devalue any properties. These are meant to keep loved ones close by, give options for residents. They're not used for short-term rentals. They're not used for anything like that. And I guess I asked the question, I guess in rebuttal, is what's the difference between adding 800 square feet to the back of your home or adding a 800 square foot garden suite 10 feet away from, just not attached to the house. So it really presents the same, I guess, building footprint, if you will. It's just separate. It gives loved ones an opportunity to be close and still have the independence to live close by. So I certainly don't think it devalues homes or anything like that. I think it's invincible density. I think it's good for Charlottetown. The reason why we reduced it down to 0.3 is when we started initially, this was new to Charlottetown. It started at 1 acre. I don't believe we had any applications. Then we reduced it down to 0.5 of an acre, and I don't think that we had a whole lot either. And then we received one application, but the lot was for 0.3, I believe, is in your area, Councillor McLeod. And again, I think these are something that we moved or council approved a couple of years ago. We're just getting no movement, so it's a matter of trying to get some movement on these because I think they're good. They're used in other municipalities, and I think they're successful. So, anyways, we'll let the residents share at the public meeting.
Good, thank you very much. Thanks for your comment, Councillor Rivard. Just again, I just wanted to make council aware that it's not a slam dunk. There is concerns. Water runoff, as we talked about here earlier. You know, once it's up there, then it becomes a problem between the two neighbors, you know, but we approved it, right? So there's trees come down, there's, you know, what used to be shade in a person's yard is now gone, right? And because it's a tree line, 10 feet is pretty close, and that's, you know, when you're used to having a good-sized backyard and privacy, and all of a sudden, because we think that, like, if it's really a loved one, well, then why aren't they building as part of the house, right? And I can see down the road, short-term rentals will be asking that question. Why can't we have short-term rentals in these garden suites? And now we're really gonna open her up. So, and there's driveway concerns. You need a separate driveway, right? It's gotta be added to this thing. So it really invades, it really, you know, pushes that person's property out, and it makes the other people around them property a lot smaller. And just need council to understand that when we move forward. Thank you very much.
And your worship, just because I have to have the last word. No, I'm joking. I don't get it at home, so I may as well get it here. Councillor McLeod, I appreciate your comments. I certainly keep your mind open to this. Again, from a water runoff and all those comments you made, concerns. I mean, there's rules and regulations at planning before one of these are approved, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. And as for, you know, locating a garden suite in the backyard and taking away from people's shade and whatever it may be next door, I mean, there'd be nothing stopping from these people from putting an 800 square foot shed. That's allowed, it's permissible, right? No one living in it. So again, I ask that you keep your mind open to these. I think these are popular, and in other municipalities are catching on. I think they're good, but I'm certainly looking forward to see what the public have to say.
It's a vote for a public consultation.
Correct.
Councilor McKay.
Yes, thank you, because I would say too, I think when I questioned, there's only 1,900 lots that would be eligible even at the 0.3. And again, that was my point to be taken. A shed, you're entitled to put a garage, but you're just not allowed to live in it, where this will allow people to put people in. So I'm excited about the public consultation.
Can I answer?
Yes, Councilor McLeod.
Thank you very much.
Your third time, yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, it's kind of a
I know, good
comment.
point.
We're a different
Good
council.
point.
But anyway, again, a garage is a garage, and a two-bedroom bungalow is different. And that's what we're talking about here, is the size of a two-bedroom bungalow, right? That's the allowed space. What's the one that was turned down was two-bedroom bungalow. So, again, you're invading people's space. I think, you know, if you're not to say anything bad about people that smoke weed or that drink or like to party, but now all of a sudden that's in your backyard. So I just need people to be aware of that. It's just not as easy as saying, let's just make affordable housing and let's have the loved ones in the backyard. There are concerns. Thank you.
Medical, medicinal marijuana in the backyard.
Yeah.
It's legal.
But
Again, it's to go to a public meeting, Your Worship.
not 10 feet you can do it.
Okay, question? Now, this is just to go to a public
Correct.
consultation, right there. Councilor McLeod and Councilor Weed.
Sorry.
With 10-0, sir. Your Worship, whereas the bylaw to amend the City of Charlottetown zoning and development bylaw P8Z2.2024 as pertains to 213 Kensington Road, PID 385849, as attached, was read and approved a first time on February 10th, 2020. Be resolved that the said bylaw be read a second time, moved by Councilor Rivera, second by Deputy Mayor Cody.
Pass.
Your Worship, be resolved that the said bylaw be approved and adopted. Moved by Councillor Barr, seconded by Deputy Mayor Cody.
Pass.
Your Worship, whereas the bylaw to amend the City of Charlottetown zoning and development bylaw, P8Z2.2025, as it pertains to the properties at Kensington Road, PID 278895, as attached was read and approved a first time on February 10th, 2020. Be resolved that the said bylaw be read a second time. Moved by Councillor Barr, seconded by Deputy Mayor Cody.
Shall it pass?
Your Worship, be resolved that the said bylaw be approved and adopted. Moved by Councillor Barr, seconded by Deputy Mayor Cody.
Shall it pass?
Pass.
Oh, what's this, Your Worship?
Go on with the next item, sir.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. It's good to see Councillor Twill still here.
Now, Councillor Rivard, can you
Yes,
just
sir.
give a little background? And could I just ask, councillors, Cindy is saying that she's not picking up the sound clear enough, so when you're speaking, just try to direct your voice to the mic, so that it's
Shot
clear.
by Rivard, wasn't it?
Correct?
Well, that could be the slap shot from the point.
So can you just give us a little background? What you're gonna do?
Yeah,
SPRs?
yeah. So, Your Worship, it's not going to be a big background council. So we're nearing the, I don't want to say the finish line, but we're getting close to having something in place for short-term rentals with regards to regulations. We do have Robert Zilk from our planning department here to present to us on a few options that we can choose from. Now, again, I know this has been a long process for many, and I know the public were frustrated with the length of time it took to get to this point. But again, I want to applaud council for waiting, because what it allowed us to do is to get further information from Host Compliance, which we hired for, I believe, 8 months to get us information with regards to the short-term rentals in downtown or all around Charlottetown, but also agreeing to for the monies, I guess, for a contract to pay for Dr. David Watchnuth from McGill University, and he presented his report to us a couple of weeks ago. Staff have been diligently working on this, crafting up a bylaw, and again, without further ado, I guess I'll turn it over to Robert and he can speak to it. So I just want to say thank you to council for I guess going along with me on this ride.
Just introduce yourself, Robert.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. My name is Robert Zilke, and as you know, I'm a community planner with the City of Charlottetown. Over the last couple of months, we have been conducting extensive research and consultation with specialists pertaining to short-term rental regulations. Staff has done a comprehensive review of existing legislation and regulations across the country, as well as consulting with specialists that work within this field. I'm happy to present the options going forward, some speaking points regarding regulations to short-term rentals, and without further ado, let's get to it. So essentially, the City of Charlottetown commissioned Professor David Walksmith from McGill University to conduct an investigation into the short-term rental market, specifically the City of Charlottetown's market. With the consultation with Professor Walksmith, we provided some data that we obtained from Host Compliance, as well as some licensing data from the province. Professor Walksmith essentially ran these numbers through his computer simulation at the McGill University labs, and he conducted a variety of analysis. Two important points. He looked at the impact on the housing market, as well as the impact onto the tourism industry. And then finally, Professor Walksmith ran 5 scenarios that staff requested him to look at and review. So, in regards to short-term rentals, in 2018, specifically 2019, we had approximately 834 active STR listings. Now, it's important to note that a listing does not constitute a property. A listing could constitute essentially even room-to-room listings. So, for example, if I had a single detached dwelling with 4 bedrooms and I rented each bedroom individually, that would count as 4 listings. When we go down and we go into the aggregate data, we actually see that that number's more of 635 rentals active in housing units. So that's approximately 635 housing units that are being used on the short-term rental market. Approximately 193 of these housing units were removed from Charlottetown's long-term housing market. So it breaks down as follows. Throughout the year, we have approximately 138 housing units that are used specifically for short-term rentals only. This means that they're not being used on the long-term housing market. In the summer, that number increases to 55 additional housing units. So the summer period that I'm referring to is between May and September. The majority of those listings, approximately 61%, are occurring in the Queen's Square and Spring Park wards, which account for approximately 70% of the 2019 host revenue. 70% of reserved nights and 75% of host revenue in Charlottetown occur between May 1st and September 30th. That is perhaps the highest seasonal variation in the Canadian market. This graph here shows the STR activity throughout the year. City of Charlottetown is highlighted in blue. Corresponding down below that, we have a lot of Atlantic Canadian cities such as Halifax, St. John's, Fredericton, Moncton, that are just below that. The distribution becomes more even as you move towards cities like in Ontario, out west, where their market is more prolonged. So because seasonally we see the majority of our activity occurring between May and September, we don't have as many long-term housing units taken out of the market because of that. So the majority is May to September. That's because the season, the way it's positioned, it's the most highly sought after when people or tourists come to the island. They're mainly vacation here between those months. So currently there are approximately 409 hosts that are operating listings in the city. The total revenue that has been generated by that is $8.5 million. The average host earns approximately $19,300, with a top host, so in a top 1%, in excess of $430,000 a year. We find that STR activity is becoming highly commercialized. In fact, the top 10% of hosts earn nearly half, which is approximately 47% of all STR revenue. So that's one statement that I believe Professor Walksmith not only mentioned in his lecture, but he also reiterated in the report, was that due to the seasonal fluctuation, we're seeing more commercial STRs. That segment of the STR market is growing quicker than the home sharing segment. So this is just a chart taken out of Professor Walksmith's report. It just goes into the number of active listings and does a contrast and comparison with the other Atlantic cities. As you can see, by per capita, we're pretty much on par with Halifax and Lunenburg, with Moncton and St. John's falling a little behind. So basically, looking down at the platforms and the most popular platforms that are used to market short-term rentals in the city, we have approximately 81% that exclusively use Airbnb. That goes to now 10% that have been exclusively used HomeAway or VRBO, which I believe are owned by the Expedia group. And then the remainder, which is about 8%, were listed on both Airbnb and one of the other 2 platforms. In regards to the compliance rate with the province, as you know, the province has a licensing component in which they require any tourist establishment to obtain through their office. Of the 635 STR listings in Charlottetown that were active at one point, the researchers at McGill were only able to identify 265 STR listings that were actually registered with the province. Therefore, we have approximately 317 STRs that are not registered and in non-compliant with the Tourism Industry Act. This graph basically shows the concentration of STR activity in the city. Like I stated previously, we are looking at the 500 lot area and then the Spring Park ward, which has the highest concentration. So in regards to listing types, entire home listings are most likely to generate negative externalities. That includes housing loss, so basically housing, long-term housing that is removed from the market, as well as neighborhood nuisances. Charlottetown's market is dominated by entire home listings. Approximately 76% of all active listings that earned $7.6 million of all host revenue in 2019. And at the bottom is a graph showing the distribution of the STR listing type. So as I stated previously, your entire home, that's usually when the host is actually renting out the entire dwelling unit, and whether they're there or not. And then we go into private room, which is basically, for example, if I had a house with 4 bedrooms and I rented out each individual bedroom to separate tourists. So in regards to the housing context, so looking at the impact, obviously this is just giving you a brief rundown, and council is well aware of the vacancy rate, where it was at 0.2%. It has increased to 1.2%, and I believe the province has mentioned 1.3%. The most significant and growing share of housing in Charlottetown is rental housing. So when we took a look at our permit data, we found that approximately 30% of all housing units were starting to be created for the rental market. So again, we're seeing that segment of the housing market growing, is basically the rental market. So the impact in regards to the housing market itself, Professor Walksmith goes into this, and most of you were there at his lecture. He does talk about full-time listings, entire homes, and multi-listings. He specifically gets into commercial operations that have more of a negative impact on the long-term housing supply if they do, in fact, take out of the long-term housing market, rather than just be rented seasonally. The STR report found that 54% of listings were operated in the host principal residence, so that is actually their residence. They're renting that out. It's not actually removing a housing market, or sorry, long-term housing from the market. In fact, it's either just home sharing, so they could either be away at the cottage or on vacation, and they're just renting out their entire dwelling unit. In regards to the housing facts, which we looked at, so we see that proportionally, the STR market has been taking more units out. From 2017, we had 55 units, in 2018, 124 units, and now in 2019, the 138 units that I previously mentioned. Again, I won't belabor the point, but again, 55 housing units at that peak season between May and September, because it is the most popular time of the year to rent for a short-term rental, is 55 housing units. But those are then returned back to the long-term housing market after September. So this is an interesting part of the study that we had Professor Walksmith look at. He looked at the impact on the availability of housing units. So what he did was, and mind you, this is all theoretical, like most academic exercises are. He did work under standard methodology, about a 2% growth rate per annum. But he essentially projected what the potential vacancy rate could look like in a market where there's either no STRs, and then right now if there was no regulations of STR at all. So to the left we have the rental vacancy rate as it stands today, and then what it's projected to do this year all the way to 2022. On the right, we look at the rental vacancy rate, where essentially there would be no dedicated STRs operating within the city of Charlottetown. And as you can see, there is quite a difference based on those rates. But further conversations with Professor Walksmith is that there's a lot to be account for this. those projections are theoretical because, again, any upset or turn in the economy or to our housing market can change those rates considerably. So again, this is just all based on the models that he ran and simulated. That's just a graph showing basically where the vacancy rate would be if we had no STRs in the city, and then if we had no regulations. So no STRs would be the blue dotted line, and the purple line is basically if we let STR activity occur unchecked and unregulated. In regards to the affordability, so this is one thing that I do provide just a caution to council on this, and this was something that I had discussions with Professor Walksmith as well. He did state in his study that growth of STRs could have contributed to an increase of rental costs of approximately 37% since 2017. Now, the methodology and where he obtained this number was from a study, a housing study that was based in the United States. That housing study was again based on a theoretical model looking at price or value of homes with supply and demand with proliferation of STRs in the local housing market, and it has never actually been truth tested per se. So again, because it's a foreign study in the United States, there is no other really study that backs up or substantiates those claims. I just want to put that to council just as a caution when I'm presenting these facts and figures. In regards to home shares and commercial operators, as council knows, the STR market, there's a variety of different type of listings that you can have. Primarily, I'm looking at home shares where you reside at your house, you short-term rental that house. Either you're renting the entire dwelling unit or you're renting a portion of the dwelling unit. But effectively, a home share would not be taking long-term housing out of the market because you would still reside there after the tourists leave. Commercial operators, however, is a situation where you could have one host that purchased multiple properties and then they rent out those said properties on a short-term basis. So effectively, those dwelling units would effectively be taken out of the long-term housing market since they wouldn't be offered to either a resident or a renter. So we looked at the data that was provided back to us with our system, and we found that the highest concentration of non-principal residents, STRs, were occurring within the 500 lot area. This graph here is taken from his report. Basically, all it states is he looked at every STR listing and through a methodology of seeing how many nights they were occupied versus if an owner had multiple listings under their account, he determined which of those listings would either be principal residence, which means, again, home sharing, versus non-principal residence, which is commercial STRs, and those would be purple, and home sharing would be blue. And as you can see from that graphic, it does show the highest concentration of those STRs are located within the 500 lot area. Now, the one thing we also asked him to do is perform a scenario modeling based on 5 separate scenarios. And we wanted him to look at the impact and the potential impact to the vacancy rate, housing supply, and then as well as to the local economy, since tourism plays a key role in Charlottetown's economy. So under scenario 1, this would be the most restrictive of any regulatory framework. Essentially, it would say that it's a principal residence only, and that would only be extended to single detached dwellings, duplexes, semis, townhouses, everything except for apartments. So apartments would not be allowed in that scenario. And what we found is that only 47, so just under half of listings would still be allowed to be permitted. And the number of nights reserved that would have been allowed is like approximately about 1/3. Housing units that could potentially return to the housing market is around 125. So that 138 units that I was talking about earlier, 125 of those would go back into the housing supply. And then in regards to the summer units, we would have, out of those 55, approximately 39 would return in those summer months. Scenario 2 would be to permit an STR in any principal residence, and now this includes apartments, but with no allowance for commercial STRs. And so what we see is that we would have 53% of active listings would still be allowed. That would equate to about 39% of reserved nights. The impact on the housing units returned to the long-term housing market would be approximately 122. And in the summer, that would return approximately 36. Scenario 3, which would permit STRs in any principal residence, again, excluding apartments, so apartments would not be allowed. So if you own an apartment, you would not be allowed to rent it as a short-term rental. But there would be an allowance for commercial STRs in zones that would permit a hostel and hotel. Now, this is an interesting scenario because staff wanted to take a look at a lot of existing situations where you have a variety of inns and commercial operations. So essentially, these areas that already would permit a hotel or hostel, which would be indicative or similar to a commercial STR, what would that do in regards to the housing context? And so what we see is that 87 of the housing units are returned to the long-term housing market. The total number of summer units is 30. In scenario 4, it's basically a duplicate of scenario 3, except now apartments would be permitted to be used as an STR as long as you are the principal resident that is offering that dwelling. And the impact to that, again, not much of a difference between the last scenario. But what we see is 86 units are returned to the housing market, and then 28 units during those peak summer months. And last but not least, scenario 5 is a duplicate of scenario 4. So again, with the difference that the DMUN, which is a downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone within the 500 lot area, would technically be permitted for commercial short-term rentals. Staff wanted to take a look at this because there's a variety of existing uses, including hotels, that are permitted in the zone. So for example, the Dundee Inn, the Rod Hotel, the Charlottetown Inn and Conference Center, the variety of suites that are on Fitzroy, all of those properties are located in the DMUN zone. So staff also wanted to take a look, well, what if commercial STRs were permitted in those zones that already permit or have at least legal non-conforming tourist accommodations such as inns and hotels. And what we saw is that approximately 50%, so 69 housing units would return to the long-term housing market, as well as in those peak summer months, the 55-17 would be returned to the long-term housing market. So this is basically the map of the downtown 500 lot area, what I was referring to before, and I got some numbers for council on this. But essentially, the downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone is that zone which permits for a variety of commercial uses, such as an office, a restaurant, funeral parlor. Let's throw that one in. So still a very concentrated commercial area. That's the transition zone when we go into the downtown neighborhood zone, which is the equivalent of like an R1L zone. So the downtown neighborhood zone is really residential in nature, and that's where the majority, again, of our housing units are located. When I took a look at the data, I found that we had approximately 83 properties in the downtown neighborhood zone, so the residential zone, that are used for short-term rentals. Now, we can further look into that. Some of them are principal residents, like you saw in that previous graphic, but there are commercial operations in it. In regards to the downtown mixed use, the DMUN zone, we have approximately, give or take, 30 properties, and that's in the yellow, that utilize short-term rental platforms. And as I previously said, we have a variety of inns and hotels that are currently existing. They too use these short-term rental marketing platforms to advertise their accommodations. But they would be excluded since they are operating as a legitimate tourist accommodation. So looking at the scenario for the housing impacts, we have Professor Walksmith that did a projection on what that would look like in regards to the vacancy rate based on each of the regulatory scenarios. So from 1 being the most restrictive to 5 being, I don't want to say the least restrictive because there would still be regulations that would be in place. But essentially what we come down to, and basically the numbers up here, but quickly, scenario 1, which is the most stringent, is 2020 you would see about 2.2%, the following year 2.9, and then the following year 3.9. Scenario 2, 2.1, 2.8, and 3.8. Scenario 3, which is the first regulatory framework that would allow for commercial short-term rentals, we see 1.7 in 2020, then that jumps up to 2.4 in 2021, and then 3.3 at 2022. Scenario 4, which is basically a duplicate of scenario 3, but apartments could be used as long as it's your principal resident. Those numbers are pretty much very much the same as scenario 3, except in 2021 it changes by 0.1%. Finally, scenario 5, which adds the DMUN zone, which is an existing mixed-use zone. The impact from a vacancy rate is 1.4% this year. That would jump to 2.1%, and then finally 3% at 2022. Now, again, this is all subject to variation. I just want to, again, reiterate that other external events, if we have either an increase or a decline in immigration rates, the relocation of STR activity, and the continuing trend of building activities, all of these percentages are subject to change, and they're all based on 100% compliance with the regulatory framework. And I think, as council, you know, and that's been presented before, the highest compliance rate in the country is the city of Vancouver, and they have 75%. And a lot of those numbers were a bit inflated because a lot of the listings were basically dead listings. That once the regulations took effect and the licensing program took effect, a lot of people just eliminated a lot of their dead listings off those STR market platforms. So that's just the vacancy rate that shows what the projection would be based on each corresponding scenario, with the purple as the existing trend. In regards to the tourism impact, we also had him look at this. And so, again, from scenario 1 and scenario 5, when you look at, and I'll look at basically the remaining listings itself, since those are the ones that you would have to see uptake in the market somewhere else to accommodate those additional listings and demand. So from scenario 1, the listings would go down to 438, scenario 2, 497, scenario 3, 469, scenario 4, 519, and then scenario 5 would be 542. And so the average nights that you would have to see uptake in those listings is not surprising. So the more restrictive regulatory framework you go with, the more percentage that you have to have other operators, existing operators or new operators, to uptake that market. So you would have to see a lot more home shares come on the market, or you would have to see commercial STRs, if they were located in properly or appropriate zoned areas, uptake a lot of those nights that wouldn't be booked without them there. So, and again, you see that ranging from 180% as the most restrictive regulatory framework, all the way down to 100% under scenario 5. again, because they're not going to get 100% compliance rate or even 75 through discussions with him, he basically looked at minimal additional listings that would have to occur based on either a 50, 75, or 100% compliance rate. He stated that 50 would be actually quite an accomplishment, especially for us, that since we're taking this this issue on for the first go around. And as you can see there, based on the scenarios, scenario 1 being the most restrictive, you would have to have 144 new listings be generated or created to uptake those additional listings that were taken off based on the regulatory scenario. And that then decreases back down to 104 in scenario 5. So really just a 40 listing difference between what could be the most restrictive to something that's more balanced to allow for commercial STRs but commercial zoned areas while maintaining low density residential zones for principal resident only. The guiding principles that council endorsed, number 1 was to protect long-term housing rental supply, 2 to ensure the health and safety of occupants. As council's well aware, the province, even through their licensing framework, they do not look at life safety or code issues. So in regards to egress and the event of a fire to escape, they do not look at these life safety issues. The city does, however, and since we're the only municipality that have actually adopted the building code, that's why we take that more onerous approach to ensure the well-being and safety of our residents. The third guiding principle was encourage neighborhood fit. That was due to nuisance complaints that are usually received from STRs. The fourth was to promote tax and regulation equity. We had a lot of different tourism establishments, such as bed and breakfasts, that have also come to us, sharing their concerns that the STR market sometimes squeezes them out. At times, they say in the summer months, there's plenty to go around, but they found that they're more squeezed during that non-peak season. So anytime between after September and May, before it starts to ramp up, there's some competition for filling their vacancy. Then the next is support to the tourism industry, since the tourism industry is such an important factor to the local economy. Encourage compliance, and then last but not least, enable supplemental income and property rights to homeowners. So home sharing, again, I'll just briefly go through this. Home sharing was essentially, doesn't remove long-term housing out of the market. If it's your principal residence and your home and you're sharing that with tourists, you eventually do return to that home and you stay there. So that was just basically looking at the home sharing aspect. The commercial STR scenarios, so scenarios 3, 4, and 5, is quite interesting since, and this is one conversation that staff had with Professor Walksmith, was that we were looking at if a commercial STR had to take place, what would be the best or most appropriate way to do that? And it goes back to land use zoning. The point of land use zoning is to basically ensure that appropriate land uses are placed in appropriate areas. So that's why those 3, 4, and 5 scenarios looked at in residential zones, principal resident only, and you're limited to 1 listing, and then directing, if there is such a need for STRs, and providing additional or alternative accommodation, then direct that to more appropriate areas, like commercial areas, which basically already establish and have those uses. And these are just basically the key directions for regulation points. And yeah, and that gets into license application, but I will just speak towards the regulation itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Very well done in layperson's terms. Not a lot of planning jargon, but it was very well done. Thank you. Councillor Rivard, did you want to?
Sure. Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Robert, for that presentation. So staff's recommendation, I guess, to what would staff's recommendation be for, I guess, which scenario to advance to the planning board and to the public meeting? What would you suggest?
Staff usually doesn't present a recommendation until after the public consultation, but it would be prudent to perhaps present the most balanced approach. That conversation that was had with, again, Professor Walksmith was to direct commercial STRs to commercial areas while retaining and protecting low density and residential zones. So it would be perhaps more prudent to at least start the discussion. Obviously, that can change during the public consultation and after public consultation when we receive feedback from the public. But to at least start that conversation, scenario 4.
Can you,
Resolution?
Robert, can you just put up resolution or scenario 4 again, option 4, just so everyone can see it? So, Your Worship, before we read the resolution, I guess, I mean, does council have, I would certainly open the floor up to council, ask me any questions or any comments, right, before we get into the whole vote.
But he has to read off the resolution, correct?
Provide Councilor Barrett, if I understand correctly, that council pursue option 4 regarding the short-term rentals as presented by planning staff this evening with a special planning board meeting scheduled for noon and Friday, March 13th, 2020.
Councilor Yanka, you,
Yeah, I just have a question. Versus scenario 3 and scenario 4. In scenario 3, it's identical to 4, except that it says, except apartments. So I'm just a bit confused that if that part of it is for principal residence only, if you rent an apartment, if that's your principal residence, could that not be then STR'd? And why then does it have to then stipulate apartments? Because that then leads me to believe that we could then have those ghost apartment buildings that could be STRs. So I just would want a little clarification around that. Thank you.
Yeah, so again, like you pointed out, Councillor, the difference between scenario 3 and scenario 4 is essentially the principal resident requirement for apartments. So essentially, if you own or you rent an apartment and that's your principal residence, so your driver's license, your tax, income tax, everything is at that address, that apartment number, then you would be, in scenario 4, you would be permitted to rent that out because it's your principal resident unit and you're not removing it from the long-term housing market because eventually you would return to your residence. Scenario 3 would basically state that if you live in an apartment or you own an apartment unit, you just would not be allowed at all to use that rented out for short-term rental purposes. So essentially, when we're looking at the principal resident unit requirement in relation to apartments, it would basically depend on the apartment. If every owner decided to rent out their apartment, then effectively you could create a situation like that. However, if they don't decide to, again, it's behavior approach, right? So it's based really on the resident themselves. But essentially, when staff was looking at those scenarios and those options, we were again looking at it from the perspective that they will return back to that residence. So still allow for the owner to rent it out if, say, they're away on vacation, right? But they do have to reside there, and they would be the person that would be responsible for activities that would occur in that unit. I'd also like to point out to council that there's a variety of municipalities across Canada that are already doing this, such as parts of Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, thank you, Robert. Seeing that we talked about institutional zones earlier, UPEI and Holland College, when we look at scenario 4, does that include institutional zones as well to have these allowed? I know we talked about commercial versus that of residential, but I'm just kind of curious if...
Yes, that's a good point, Councillor. So scenario 4 would not necessarily include the institutional zone itself, since it's basically focusing on commercial zones. But upon public consultation, that's something that council could add effectively as a permitted use in the institutional zone.
Your Worship, just to follow up, Robert, thank you. What we should do is we should make sure that we have the zones covered. if we're talking about different zones having different rules. Because again, we just talked about the institutional zones tonight, and I think it would be prudent to take at least that as part of our package, if you will, to the public for discussion.
So you want to add institutional?
Well, I think we talked about it tonight. I think we should at least make it part of the conversation.
Just again, a response to your statement there, Councillor. When we were looking at STR regulations, we were looking at the impact on dwelling units per se. Dormitories, they don't fit the definition of a dwelling unit or zoning bylaw, since they don't, each individual unit doesn't contain kitchen facilities or washing facilities. They're usually shared facilities within a dormitory, so they wouldn't necessarily be applied in these regulations.
Okay.
Councillor Drawn.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Robert, for your presentation. You know, I'm just kind of, you know, I don't know where to go with this. If we're going to the public and looking for their input, why are we looking to vote on a resolution here tonight to take that forward? I mean, you have 5 options here. You're going to the public. Why not, you know, can't we go and listen to their input before we sit here tonight and decide, well, we're going to go this way or we're going to go that way? I think by taking our time, going to see what the public wants to do first, and then make an informed decision on that.
Thank you, Councillor. In response to that, I just again want to reiterate that staff is not formally recommending this option to go forward as a regulation. Staff makes a recommendation on policy after the public consultation. So after the public consultation is held, depending on the feedback, any of those regulations or regulatory scenarios could be modified, switched, added to, subtracted from. Essentially, all staff is recommending is that we just proceed with what we deem to be the most balanced framework, and then receive feedback, public feedback based on that framework to inform us to go forward with actual regulations and eventually an actual recommendation for council to approve.
Councillor Rivera.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if we touched on the timelines or not, but again, this is going to Planning Board on the 13th, Friday at noon for I guess with the recommendation to advance this to a public meeting. It goes to council, I believe, on the 16th. I'm away on the 16th, but it's just a vote by council to send it to a public meeting, which is going to be held on the 31st of this month, which I will be back. That's the timeline.
Alex, did you want to add something? Mr. Forbes?
Just typically when you go to the public, you go up to the public with something. You need to start the discussion. Because if you go up to the public and you just open it up, that discussion will go on for quite some time. That doesn't mean you can't move off of that. But the public usually want to see where are you generally, whether it's just a land use policy, or new official plan policies. They want something to look at so they can respond to. But if you open it up so wide, that's a pretty big sort of a range of options, and you'll hear every one of them at the public meeting, and I'm not certain that it's going to narrow the discussion. But this gives you a general idea where you're going. Doesn't mean you can't change.
Councillor Yankoff?
I just want to clarify then. So if we proceed to whatever that next step was and eventually to a public consultation, and we're looking at scenario 4, so that's 100% sure that after public consultation, we can still look at what we're doing?
Correct. Yeah, that's why you're going to the public. I mean, if you go to the public, you're asking them their opinion, and they want you to, you need to give the appearance that you're there to listen to them, so things may change after you hear the discussion from them. But it's nice to give them a strategy and where you're generally going.
So then my follow-up question to that is similar to what Councillor Duran said. Are we not saying to the public we're pushing this, or not pushing this as a harsh word, but are we not already zeroing in on one scenario when we go to a public meeting, and we're not keeping it?
You're narrowing the discussion so they can look at that,
Okay.
and then they will respond very, people will clearly indicate whether they're comfortable with that, or other components of it, but you'll get that feedback from them, but it just puts something on the table, it opens it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
There's a framework to work with it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Terry McLeod from Ward 2.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So realistically, could we put a two scenarios on the table? Like, could we put 3 and 4?
Well,
And to vote on, like, to bring it to a public meeting, like, or
I think it's
3, 4, 5, or?
usually, like, let's say this was just a straight, we were doing an official plan of the zoning bylaw. We would propose something, and there's usually not scenarios. There's a lot of research done in here, and the research is trying to reflect the direction from staff to you. So, again, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't change, but you don't usually have different scenarios because you're kind of hitting two different viewpoints against each other, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get some sort of a consistent direction from the public. Not everybody will like this, or whatever scenario you pick, but again, it puts it out, and then you can give an indication of where you're generally headed.
Okay, so, what we're thinking is go with 1 for tonight, but are we gonna present the other scenarios at the public meeting? No.
We will be focusing in on where that scenario is,
Right.
and why we're there, and the public will give you feedback and hear how comfortable they are with that position.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just the beauty of the internet is that this is live stream. So if someone wishes to go back into the archive, they will be able to see his full presentation and the five options. Councilor Bernard.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I think everything's on the table. And I think they have to start somewhere. And as opposed to confusing people with having 5 different scenarios, they're going to show scenario 4, but that can all change. Everything's going to be on the table. Depends what the public says will end up being the scenario we go with. It may be different than this, but I think everything's on the table. I think what Alex is trying to say is not to confuse people, say you can pick this one or this one from 1 to 5. Everything's on the table. And so this is the one they're recommending is most consistent. We'll see what the public says.
Councilor Trio.
Well, maybe you can help me, Alex. Last week, there was, there's different positions that people that are in favor of Airbnbs, the ones that are opposed are pretty hard, fast in their positions. But apparently, we're going to go to a public consultation meeting, but there was private meetings held last week with the city of Charlottetown. I received an email from one of my constituents asking about a private meeting with one of the organizations. So is that all factored into the public consultation process? Trying to understand the procedure and the process.
Well, from the planning department's perspective, we just go to the public. I mean, possibly some counselors or there could have been some discussions. It wasn't with staff. I mean, we had everything through the public hearing process and through council.
Councilor Rivard, do you want to clarify that?
Yes, Your Worship, I sure can. Thank you, Councillor Twill. So they certainly weren't private meetings. There was a meeting between myself, Mayor Brown, Robert, and Ronnie, with
2 people from Airbnb.
and 2 representatives from Airbnb. And really, the conversation wasn't about anything private. It was a conversation that we were trying to have around Airbnb, working with Airbnb to collect the levy, for instance, the 4% levy, and also potentially around licensing that they do for other municipalities, because this is not something that the platforms have to do. So the meeting was just simply trying to reach out to figure out exactly what the platform can do for us when it comes to collecting taxes and things of that nature. So again, there has to be willingness on their part.
Could you also tell the council the meeting we had today?
Oh yeah, we met with a couple individuals as well today, and had a great discussion. Yeah, Jonathan Greenan and Nathan Hood. It was a good conversation, and again, they expressed some concerns, with how the process was handled up to this point. We explained that we want to get this as close to right as we possibly could by taking our time, getting the data from host. Of course, having David Wasmuth do some of the work for us, so kind of got us to where we are today. So definitely no private meetings. The mayor's doors were open, and
And it was on Twitter before we got out the door.
before I got the door. So
On Twitter.
and that's okay, because there was nothing discussed.
Right in Twitter.
Yeah, it was just simply looking at ways that the platforms can assist the city in collecting taxes and things of that nature. So that's
So,
it.
you know what, Councilor Rivard?
Yes.
I just want to say something. I think you have made this a very open and a transparent process. We opened these doors for the Prince Edward Island Affordable Housing, Fight for Affordable Housing Association, UPI Students Union. We had also private owner-operators. So I commend you for all the work you've been doing on this. Want to read
I got one. What's that?
another question?
Yeah.
Okay. Second question.
Again, Councilor Rivera, I appreciate all the work you're doing too, believe me. I certainly know it's been a long process for you and for the staff. I'm just trying to understand the procedure and the process. And like I said, I did get an email from a constituent that was very concerned, and the way I understood it, and the way he presented it to me was, it was a private meeting. And I wasn't there to see if the doors were open or not open, I'll take your word for it. But the way it was presented to me was, it was a private meeting. I said, I'm sorry, I can't comment because I wasn't there. I'm out of the province, I have no idea. So how does that factor in when you're having meetings one-on-one with one side and a one-on-one with the other side, and staff is there as well, so you have staff, yourself, and the mayor. How does that all factored into the public consultation process in terms of striking the balance?
It'd be no different from you and your meetings at Tim Hortons and Starbucks. I mean, it doesn't. We're elected officials who can meet with anybody and gather as much information. There was no promises made. There was no information shared. It was just it's something that we as councillors have to do our due diligence. So nothing private.
And the two meetings we had, as I said, it was on Twitter by the time we left the door. And then in this meeting here, I said, look, tweet it and put it on Facebook or Instagram. We're not hiding anything. This process has been very open and transparent. So I think I'm pretty proud of where we got to this point. Anyways, sorry there.
Question.
Councillor Yankoff.
Just to kind of go back to what Councilor McLeod and Councilor Duran said, is there any way that we can fine tune this resolution and fine tune it that it's 3 and 4 go on to public consultation? Like, can I put that on the floor to change that resolution?
You want to put an amendment on the?
I would. I would like to put it on to have
To second the amendment,
have
that you want to go from
3 and 4.
option 4 to option 3 and 4.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor that council pursue options 3 and 4.
I think all those options are going to be available, are they not?
No.
They are. I guess what's happening in Charlottetown is that there's an easy, Vancouver and Toronto went a very restrictive approach because they were the first ones into the marketplace to deal with this. What we're trying to do here is a made in Charlottetown solution. You gotta realize this has been a tourism town for 100 years. So it's some of these units have been in the downtown prior to all of these issues dealing with short-term rentals. So those scenarios 3 and 4 are the ones. 1 and 2 are really dealing with suburbia, and then 3 and 4 are dealing with suburbia. How basically most other municipalities have regulated SDRs. So that's a very straightforward for the wards outside of the downtown or the north of Euston there. And then the interesting part will be how do you balance dealing with the downtown, which is it has a lot of residential in the downtown, and that is unique in and of itself. A lot of downtowns don't have residential in it. So you've got a lot of bed and breakfast down there. You've got a lot of different land uses that line up together and coexist. And scenario 3 or 4 is just trying to deal with the way that most SDRs have been dealt with across the country in the suburban wards, and then in the downtown, recognizing some of the commercial activities that are down there and trying to ensure that you're not limiting, the ability to allow somebody to do something that they've been doing for a long time. And but to Councilor Bernard, clearly when you hear back from the public on both how to deal with the outlying areas and the downtown, you'll get lots of feedback, and we'll try to bring a report back to you indicating what we've heard, and you folks can readjust at that time.
Okay, so the amendment was moved by Councillor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McLeod, that we look at options 3 and 4. So let's vote on that. You want a question? Okay, go ahead.
And I don't mind, to me, if I'm understanding this correctly, is we're starting with a frame, and we're starting at frame 4. What's in frame 3 or what's in frame 5, if the public likes that, they can recommend that goes into the framework. So at the end of the day, when all the consultation is done, the frame we go with may not look like this at all. It's going to be from a lot of the feedback we get from the residents. They're going to be showing them the different options that are available. And I think what I'm hearing over here is that they're thinking that some of those frames, the recommendations inside frame 3, for example, is not going to be brought up front. And I'm under the understanding that everything's on the table. Everything can be brought up at the public forum, and that will create the frame that we go with.
Correct, and you,
Okay.
we'll be constantly getting feedback from the public and yourselves, and when this comes back and goes through the planning board,
Yeah.
back to council, we will have responded to what the public have provided to us and through public dialogue, generally what we've heard from you folks. We'll try to again tailor that to get a solution back to you that we think will work, but ultimately, it'll be at the floor of council and you signing off on what you think is that appropriate balance.
And so my concern right now, Your Worship, is if we just say we're going to put frame 3 and 4, are we saying we're not going to look at the others?
No,
Right now, everything's on the table.
Councillor Bernard, the Jamaican, is, the framework is already set for option 4. And if we want to add, that's the beauty of public consultations.
Yep.
You can add, delete, omit,
So all those
enhance.
ones, yeah.
It's beautiful. Yes, sir?
No, never mind. I'm good.
Councillor McLeod.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So just again, by presenting two options, which are very similar, very close, farther away from 1, farther away from 5, we're kind of narrowing it down. I just think it's great that we're going forward to the public with a couple of options, right? We're kind of letting the public know, look, we're not really into 1s, we're not, council kind of doesn't like 5, but we do like these 2. So it does give the public a little more chance to, you know, to really zero in on those 2, instead of everyone coming to the meeting, I want 1, I want 5. We're saying now, look, we're right here, what do you think? That's why I think the option should be given.
I'm just wondering, I think everybody's saying the same thing, but these 4 or 5 scenarios, can they not be posted somewhere available for people to see what this report said? So then that way, they can have an idea of these are the things we've looked at, and we can start from the framework 4 and work backwards based on that?
Yeah, we can put those up on the website, correct? Planning?
I think that's the intention.
Yeah.
Correct, so
Yeah,
I
okay.
think we will do that.
Okay. Question call?
Please.
So what are we,
You're voting, here it is. We're voting on the amendment that council pursue option 3 and 4 regarding short-term rentals as presented by planning staff, that wasn't, this evening to a special planning and board meeting scheduled for noon, Friday, March 13th, 2020. Friday the 13th. Okay,
but your worship, just before, but we're,
it's an amendment.
yeah, I know, but we're talking about, I guess I'm a little confused here what we're doing because we talk about, sorry, I'll stand up.
3 and
Well,
option 3.
no, I get that, but we just said that the manager of planning is going to post, or this will be posted, or the scenarios will be there, so I guess, you know,
That's the amendment on the floor, sir. You have to vote on it. Or the mover and the seconder can.
but the problem is that we're not, council's not gonna vote no against this, it's not saying no to
Yeah.
option 3.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is
Because
that
they're
we
all there.
created the expectation now, we may as well throw 1, 2, and 5 on there. Right? Well, you have to, because
Yeah.
now we're creating an expectation that 3 and 4 are gonna be out there,
If we
so why are,
if we defeat this, we go back to the original motion.
I don't know why we wouldn't go back to the original, because I said we're creating, either we bring all 5, or you bring one piece of framework that can be worked off,
This
that's all.
is 3 and 4,
Yeah.
not 3 or 4.
3 and 4, but you may as well go 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Well, that's the motion on the floor, and then we
Defeat this motion, go back to the original.
either you rescind it,
So,
I mean,
we only have one kick at the can here, so what, should this be rescinded? Like what, I mean, everyone's saying the same thing, so can we not create a resolution that says what we're all saying?
option 4.
But that's then everyone's gonna think we're only taking option 4 to the meeting.
And
The resolution could be,
to have a balanced approach and presentation when we go to the public consultation, we're recommending option 4, but the other options will be there, will be out there that people can pick and choose. So that's why we're doing it. So it's just to get feedback, and there will be adds and deletes.
Your worship, I'd like to mention that Robert's going to be speaking to some of this
Yes,
at
I
the
know he is.
presentation. So again, and it's a pretty simple thing to mention that we're looking at scenario 4, and really what it is removing the apartment piece. From scenario 4, you have scenario 3 without adding a whole bunch. My fear is that we add too much
Do we
to the
wish,
agenda.
is it all right, moving seconder, we send this and just go with option 4?
As
wanna
long
vote?
as long as,
Let's just vote on it.
as long as the public, it's put in public record that this is not the only thing that we're gonna be discussing.
You wish to rescind.
Okay, as long as there's a public,
There will
it
be
has to
public
be,
consultation.
but there also has to be said publicly that this is not the scenario, like, this doesn't,
Other scenarios out.
this doesn't make, this does, no, actually, I'm not gonna rescind it, because it doesn't feel right. People should be able to see how the sausage is made.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you're just looking for a starting point, what's the argument against using scenario 3? I mean, if we're going to, you know, 3 only.
But it doesn't matter, we can go scenario 3 then.
Yes, it's just
We-
one
Staff-
scenario. It's very close to 4. Let's just get it on the floor and let's get going.
But 4 is close to 3.
And
And
3
3
is
is
close to 4.
It's just a starting point. It's the best way to put it.
Okay, let's just get some staff input first. Robert, do you want to clarify something?
Thank you, Your Worship. The reason why staff's not recommending that this be the regulatory framework. Staff's just recommending the most balanced approach out of all 5 regulatory frameworks. When it comes to a matter of process, and these regulations, whatever direction that council provides me tonight, I have to go back tomorrow and I have to write that verbatim in the regulations, in the bylaw, because the public needs to basically comment on something. Like, they have to see it and they have to comment on it. So I can't write 2 different regulations that contradict each other, right? When I send a set of rules, like this is the regulatory framework that we're receiving feedback on, it can be changed after public consultation. There's no argument about that. But it's hard for me to write 2 sets of regulations that kind of oppose each other, right? Because the rationale that staff has to come by is that this is what we're proposing after public feedback's received. If the majority of the public say, we don't want apartments to be used for short-term rentals, then council has the direction, and then we just go basically to scenario 3, and we remove apartments from STRs. So it's just a matter of process for me to write the regulations for everyone in the public to read them and look at them, right? And then they can provide comments on that.
Councillor Platt.
Good, thank you very much, Your Worship. So, one of the most successful public meetings we've had was on the Fitzroy Street project, where we actually presented all the scenarios on a board, right? Because this gets pretty heavy, right? And after a while, words get pretty confusing. Maybe we should just have the 5 boards pasted on easels, right? Let people have the half hour, an hour of rotating around, looking at the five scenarios, and then when we start the meeting, we go from there. And that way, everyone gets a chance to really get a feel and get a visual, because it's a lot of words here, right? And it can get quite confusing.
Yeah, Councillor McLeod, just again, I think what Robert has explained to us is that the option is only to make sure that there's a framework to work within. That's all it is. It doesn't mean we're stuck with option 4. It's just where we start from. I think we all understand that, right? And by
I don't think the public will.
voting against 3 and 4, option 3 and 4, that doesn't eliminate this, the original motion, does it, Mr. Kelly? No. Does it eliminate, or does it jeopardize it? No. All you're doing is saying yea and nay to the amendment. If you say nay, then we go to option 4. It doesn't negate this against that. So let's just have, okay.
Your Worship, thank you. I guess my question would be to Robert. I mean, I guess he's the one doing all the work, and if we're going with scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I guess I'm curious how long we have to delay this public meeting, because I'm guessing that you're going to need time to write 5 different bylaws to basically coincide with 5 different scenarios.
That would be correct. I would have to present, again, the point of the public consultation is to present to the public, this is legislatively, like, these are the regulations.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the public needs to comment on what do they like.
So
Or
give
not
us a rough idea of how much we'd have to delay this, because I'm sure the public would love to delay it even longer for five different scenarios, because that's what we'd have to do.
Essentially, yes, like following the Planning Act, it's when I go to the planning board and then go to you to proceed to public consultation, as part of the package of the report, I would have to basically have, I would say right now, I probably would have 5 attachments, so that would be 25 attachments if I had to actually present 5 separate regulatory scenarios, all different.
We know it'll, Greg?
Really gonna lend itself, I think, to a lot of, people are gonna get confused.
Okay.
Reality is,
Okay.
if you
But
don't,
that's what we're trying to avoid.
it's kind of like going into the public with 3 different zones. We don't advertise for 3 different zones, we advertise for a zone.
Let's,
If
Okay.
somebody
let's
doesn't like
verify.
that zone, they say no, and then we will naturally go back to the zone which they generally thought was more appropriate, so.
okay, Councillor
Okay.
Yankoff.
So
what do you wanna do?
I'll rescind it as long as it's open at public
Yep, no.
consultation that people can discuss it, and
And Councillor McLeod, do you agree or disagree?
Disagree.
Disagree?
Yeah.
But it's, if one
Doesn't matter.
you agree?
Just
Well, then
re-vote
we'll
it.
just vote to defer.
Go ahead.
You can't,
We're
if
done
she
with it.
disagrees, the amendment falls. Correct, Mr. Kelly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you wish to rescind it? Councillor Yankoff? Okay, so it's rescinded.
I haven't recently rescinded it.
I can't,
Yeah,
yeah,
so you would need a
So
second.
he can, what?
yeah. We have to vote on this amendment.
Okay, let's go.
So are we voting on the?
We're voting on the council pursue options 3 and 4 regarding short-term rentals as presented by planning staff this evening at a special meeting.
So as long as we're aware that this is going to cause delays, that this will not be ready for Friday.
If you vote
If
for
you
the
vote
amendment,
for it.
yes.
Correct, okay, as long as we understand
Vote
that.
this till we go back to the other one.
okay, what is it again? Okay.
I wanted to request to speak if I could. because-
Well, no, because we have to move. Councilor Ramsey,
Hello. I'm still awake, Your Worship.
Councilor Twill. Eight. Opposed. And in favor was Councilor
Am I able to ask a question before we do it?
Well, we're going to go on to the next motion.
Can I ask a question on the next one?
Oh, yeah. So, do you want to read this one, sir?
What?
Read this again?
Moved by Councilor Bernard, second by Deputy Mayor Brody, that council pursue option 4 regarding the short-term rentals as presented by planning staff this evening to a special planning board meeting scheduled for noon Friday, March 30th.
Councilor McLeod.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So, Councillor Verre, can you just explain to me one more time what's the 13th? Why is it to be at the 13th?
Well, in order to get this, we kind of set out deadlines to the public, and I'll be honest, I didn't think we were going to hit them when we were late receiving David Washington's report, but but thanks to Robert and his hard work, we were able to get this thing moved on. So again, there's an expectation that we move this along. We told the residents, we created an expectation, I guess, to the residents that we're going to have this done by the end of March, or at least to the public by the end of March. There's no reason why we can't. If we were to do option 3, 4, then I would say municipal do all five options, but that means 5 different bylaws, which requires a ton of time for Robert to put together. So again, that's really why we want to meet that 13th deadline in order to get to that 31st date. And if we don't want to do it, then I guess, I don't know, good luck with the public, but I'm certainly on board with getting this thing to the 31st. It's the public meeting.
Thank you very much. So, just to clarify, so whether we make the decision or not by March 31st, nothing is going to happen right away. There's going to be a grace period, I believe. Right? So, I'm more concerned with, I really don't care about the time frame. I'm more concerned with making sure the public is aware of what we're doing. And, I just don't know, like, if they've really seen enough of this to say that one issue is good and the rest aren't.
This will be, the public's going to see this. It's not, again, this is all public tonight. This is going to be public records. There's nothing, this is why we're doing it this way. It's open, as the mayor would say, and transparent. We're not hiding anything, but we need a starting point. And I'm really, really reluctant. I know, I appreciate your point, but I'm very reluctant to have staff write that many bylaws and delay this any further. Again, we haven't discussed the grace period yet, so I think it's presumptuous. It certainly makes sense. But yeah, I think we need to get this to the public on the 31st. I think staff's prepared to get it to the public on the 31st, and I think we should try to meet that goal.
Question?
Questions called.
Question call.
What are we voting on now?
You're voting on going to public consultation option 4.
Jeez. Almost gonna order some breakfast sandwiches, Your Worship. Tea and coffee, Greg?
So again, Robert, thank you very much. Alex, thank you. Job well done. Okay. Anything else there, Councilor Vert? Huh? You sure?
2 hours is what you're... No, Park and Rec was there.
Did you, you're all done? Okay. Let's move on. We have, environment, sustainability.
So thank you very much, Your Worship. The Environment Sustainability Committee met on February 25th, 2020. The Mayor's Task Force met on the 11th, and the Food Council met on February 19th. The draft minutes are in the package. I do have a few highlights, Your Worship, just to mention. The monthly ridership for Charlottetown Transit System was 58,210 for February, and which is a 28% increase from the previous February. So good things happening in transit. The high school transit pilot currently is keeping its numbers at 660, and that's for Charlottetown and Colonel Gray, Charlottetown Rural and Colonel Gray High Schools. The Bring It Business is a business recognition program that was launched on March 3rd as a follow-up to the Bring It Charlottetown campaign, which was very successful. This program is intended to encourage food service businesses to reduce their single-use plastics by avoiding using the items altogether, and when possible, opting for a more sustainable initiative. City staff will be working with interested businesses and can sign up to participate on the website. The Home Flood Protection Week is March 23rd to the 27th, and the City of Charlottetown is joining other municipalities across Canada and the Intact Center of Climate Adaptation to share information with residents about how they can protect their homes from costly and inconvenient spring floods damage, and that can be made worse as an effect of the climate change. During Home Flood Protection Week, the city will be sharing tips and information and with followers to help them to do some preventive action and to protect themselves and their homes from flood damage via social media channels. So find out more information about home flood protection and local and global climate change impacts on the city's website. The Charlottetown Food Council is in the process of developing a food asset map for the city of Charlottetown and are seeking community input to ensure that the final map provides a complete picture of the existing food assets that's in Charlottetown. There are a number of workshops and pop-ups events going to happen in March and April, and for those that want to participate, dates and details can be found on the city's webpage and Facebook. And lastly, we have two resolutions this month, both related to improving the energy efficiency of our city facilities. Both projects will contribute to the goals of our city community energy plan and help us meet our corporate greenhouse gas reduction target. I'll try to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Resolution number
No,
one.
I had a question.
Oh, I didn't see that, Councilor Twill.
Thank you for your report, Councilor McLeod. As you know, the students at Colonel Gray High School had a march here just in the last day or so, wanting to speak out against any type of actions taken against the Crows. And I want the students to know at Colonel Gray, I very much appreciate and respect their interest and their commitment with respect to the Crow situation. I would encourage Councillor McLeod that maybe your committee, and I wouldn't mind going to that, and maybe have a meeting with the students at Colonel Gray so they can become informed as to what the dilemmas are with respect to the Crows and how in some parts of the city they are a hazard and interfering with the quality of life of some of our residents. And maybe even present the challenge to the students at Colonel Gray or maybe one of the biology teachers or anyone teaching environment, maybe to write a term paper or write a report, get them really engaged in the issue, go out into the community, meet with city officials, meet with residents, get some information, be able to write a report. I think it'd be a great exercise for the students at Colonel Gray. You know, it's one thing to go out and be a part of a march, and I certainly appreciate and respect the fact that they did do that, but at the same token, I think since they've taken that step now, they need to go all the ways and become much more informed. So maybe you could contact one of the biology teachers or environment teachers and issue a challenge to the students to write an in-depth report and use the city of Charlottetown as a reference point. Just a suggestion.
Colonel Gray and Charlottetown. Councilor McLeod, you want to?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Trio, for your questions on the crows. I think our committee has spent extensive time on it without coming up with a real positive answer one way or the other. But I would suggest that if Colonel Gray and Charlotte Rural are interested in doing a report and doing their own fact-finding mission, that the city and the Environment Department would definitely be on hand to give them any help that they would require. But at the end of the day, we have researched this quite thoroughly, and at this time, I mean, the city and council have decided that there's no venue until we hear something better, and that's why we reached out to the province with the Department of Wildlife and Fishery to see if they have any insight on this, because we are at a stalemate as to what can be done. The crows are very much a survivor, and I don't think it matters what you do, they're going to be here, and we got to respect that, right? I mean, green space is a wonderful thing, and we push hard for that, but unfortunately, what happens is there's this thing called wildlife out there that wants to share the green space with us, and I don't think there's much we can do, to be honest with you. But again, it's a good learning curve for the students, and I think if they wanted to approach our department, we would certainly work with them. Thank you very much.
Just to follow up, thank you, Councillor McLeod. I know you've reached out to the province, is there any thoughts about having any conversations or discussions with the Atlantic Vet College and about the deployment of the Falcon? You know, that's part of the food chain, you know, bring in the falcons and to maybe use that as a deterrent for the crows. I'm not arguing about the green space. What I'm arguing about is neighborhoods that are truly being affected by being overwhelmed by crows. I mean, some people might not think it's an issue. I can tell you, some of the residents I've talked to, it's a tremendous issue where their homes are being swarmed. They're there early morning through the day, and it's affected their quality of life. So it is, in some cases, a true hazard. So I just wanted to bring up the issue of, or the strategy of enlisting and working with Atlantic Vet College and bringing in the falcons.
So can you just take that under advisement?
Just going to say I'll take that under. Yes. Yep. Thank you.
Just read it there?
Yeah.
Did you read it there, Mr.?
Yes, Your Worship. Your Worship, moved by Councilor McLeod, second by Councilor Bernard, that Honeywell be awarded the energy performance contract tender in the amount of zero taxes included, and that any capital expenditure required as part of this energy-saving investment will be expended on the 2021 capital budget, and further that the mayor is hereby authorized to execute standard contract agreements to implement this resolution.
There's a kind of. That's a great tender.
That is, you like that? $0.
Okay.
Question's been called.
Question was called? Okay. He's called. $0.
Can't lose on that one.
If I come in just to speak, not to steal Mr. Bernard's thunder.
No, keep going.
Environment and sustainability is the department that's really done a lot of work on this project, and
very
I would like just to say.
He just looks at the dollar sign.
Yeah, I know. It's good to have him on the committee, but it was the Environment Committee.
Yeah.
Big vote.
It's the city of Charlotte out there.
Okay. Sir, you got the other one?
More Phillips Solution Stations.
Your Worship, moved by Councilor McLeod, second by Councilor Bernard, that the Energy Network Services, ENS, be awarded the Pownell Parkade Energy Efficient Lighting Upgrade Tender in the amount of $65,873.92, taxes excluded, and that this be expensed out of the 2020-2021 capital budget, and further that the mayor and CEO are hereby authorized to execute standard contract agreements to implement this resolution, Your Worship.
Question.
Question called.
Just a question.
Everybody got it.
I got a question. Maybe, Mr. Kelly, you could help me with this question. As you know, we're going to spend this money in doing some upgrades with the Pownell Parkade. There was discussions at one time as to whether or not the city of Charlottetown would consider selling some of these parkades to the private sector. And I'm just wondering, I know this is not part of the resolution, but I'm wondering if you can give me an insight as to where we're at in that process.
There's no decision of council. It is something that we may bring back at some point in time, but right now there is no direction at this time.
Okay. Question called? Okay. Go vote. Councilor Aycock.
Mr. Giddy.
Zero.
I,
Anything else? there, Counselor? Counselor Cloud?
Oh,
Done?
I did, oh,
Okay, you're all done?
oh, I'm all done, yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Very much, sir. Job well done. Strategic priorities in intergovernmental cooperation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Strategic Priorities and Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee met on February 27th, and also the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee met on the 13th of February, and the Youth Engagement Advisory Committee met on March the 3rd. Draft minutes are included in your package, and there are no resolutions for you to consider at this time. But if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer. Thank you.
No resolutions, Counselor?
No.
Moving on. Finance and Audit.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, the Finance Audit and Tendering Committee met, well, there's a number of dates there, we met quite a bit. Working, as you know, on the operational budget. It is coming together, Your Worship. Do want to say thank you for the cooperation we've been receiving from all the management team and the chairs, Your Worship. It's been excellent help, and it's certainly very much appreciated, so we do want to say thank you for that. We're probably another week and a half away from the final document that we'll be able to present on March 27th. So, Your Worship, other than that, we have one resolution, and I'll do my best to answer any questions.
Counselor Toronto.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for your report, Councillor Bernard. I know you're busy with the operational budget there, but last month I had asked if your committee could take a look at council expenses. I've noticed that there was nothing in your report. Maybe you didn't have time, but the council's travel expenses have been doubled since last year, so I was just wondering if you had the chance to put a limit on something there or come back to the committee with something. Thank you.
Yeah, we actually did look at it briefly. It is different from last year. Last year, the last numbers being an election year, and a lot of people are campaigning in September, October, when most of these conferences are. I think if you look back at 16 and 17, it's pretty much the same as it was those particular years. But again, we're still into the operational budget. It has been talked about. We will continue to talk about it until the budget's finalized.
Thank you for that. When I was looking on the website, I couldn't find previous years. So, you know, you might have had the numbers that you could look at, but I couldn't compare apples to apples there. So, if they get up on the website there soon, then I could be able to look at that. That'd be great. Thank you.
Just correct me if I'm wrong there, Counselor. Did they just stay up for 6 months?
I'm sorry?
Did they stay up for 6 months?
Uh,
Mr. Kelly or Martin? No. When you put up expenses and that, what's that?
Here, Your Worship.
Jennifer would answer.
Yeah, Jennifer?
So, since you've been under WIP, we put them up every quarter.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I've been into that with a but as of when you launched our website in 2018, I believe that at least the full 2019 year is up. Where we're at now.
Right on.
So,
Thank you.
Ron wants to find out, you can just send an email.
So I have what's available on the web. Anything more than that would have to come from finance.
I'm sure we can find it. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Okay. You have one resolution there.
Yes, Your
We
Worship.
do, yep.
Your Worship, moved by Councilor Bernard, seconded by Councilor Trio, that the City of Charlottetown accepts the 1.13 acres of land as parkland for the Royalty Ridge Developments, PID 388595, as indicated on the attached survey plan, and that the City of Charlottetown agrees to purchase 1.3 acres of additional parkland from the developer Royalty Ridge Estates, Inc., for the purchase price of $46,000, HST included, and that the funds required to purchase this land will be reallocated from the Parkland Reserve account, and that the Planning Department will enter into a development agreement with the developer, and further that the Mayor and CEO are hereby authorized to execute the standard contract agreements to implement this resolution, Your Worship.
Question?
Questions called?
You're up, Sue. Keep her rolling, Jill. Okay. Is that it, Councillor Bernard?
It is, Your Worship.
You're all right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. administration, and anything else there?
Oh, just perfect. That'll do. I never get to talk very long in my reports, but I am going to give a special shout out tonight to start this off to our Lady Panther basketball team, who yesterday on International Women's Day won the CIAU bronze medal, as well to Jenna May Ellsworth is deserving a special recognition too, because she was the NANCOP award winner, which makes her the top female university basketball player in Canada. So that's pretty impressive for our little island to go out and do such a great job. There we go. Our minutes are in the, for Human Resources Communications Administration met on March 4th. The minutes are in your package. No resolutions for consideration, but any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
So I did receive a text from a former employee, Donna Hurry, and she said that and Jenna May was the recipient of the 2016 Dave Eli McAfee.
Excellent. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she's just been on the rise, and I watched her play in Ottawa. Exceptional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Real leader.
Is that it?
Yes, that's everything. Thank you.
Okay. Parks and Recreation?
No. Protective services.
Protective and Emergency Services.
Thank you, Worship. The Protective and Emergency Services Committee report, met on February the 24th, 2020. The minutes are included in your package. I'll just keep this very light. There's many department activities in fire and policing. They're both in your package, where community policing and charitable work was being done this month, as many months, so a big shout out to both departments for that. Most of our meeting was held on discussing budgets, and that pretty well concludes my report for this month. Any questions, I'll ask them as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Durant, for your report. Last month, I asked a couple of questions. One is, I wanted a copy of the memorandum of understanding that Charlottetown City Police has with the RCMP. I'd like to get a list of all of those agreements, partnerships, opportunities, and options that the city police partners with other policing agencies across the province. I'd like to become much more informed as to what the operations and how the operations are executed within the Charlottetown Police Department, and who they collaborate with on a daily basis. The second issue I wanted to bring up is, as you know, last month I stated unequivocally that I feel quite strongly, unequivocally strongly, that the residents in my particular ward deserve to have the same quality of life that exists in other parts of the city, whether you live in Brighton, Lewis Point Park, wherever the case may be. And what I wanted to know was, last month I asked you for a 2-month status report and how many charges were laid with respect to drug houses, crack houses, and the sale of drugs and drugs that are quite prevalent on the streets of Charlottetown. So I was wondering, sir, if you can give me an update on those two particular topics.
I'll do the best I can. I don't remember you specifically asking for a memorandum of agreement between policing agencies on the island with the city police, and you know, maybe you did, maybe I missed it. Is that something that you spoke about openly and asked for?
Yes, sir.
That's
okay.
So, did you not invite Councilor to the last Protective Services Committee to address some of these issues?
Yes, I did.
Did he show up?
No.
Invite him again?
Well, I could certainly invite him to this month, yes.
Point of order, Your Worship. Point of order.
Let me just finish.
Yeah, okay. Point
Who
of order.
wants to ask? Do you want to talk?
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Point of order. Regardless of whether I'm invited to a committee meeting or not, I asked a couple of questions. I just want the answers. Shouldn't have to go to a standing committee any department or any committee, because, then we'd be doing the Southside Shuffle, trying to get to all these committees. I mean, we got enough meetings now that are being held here in the city, probably doubled from what we had in previous years. But I did, Bob, in all sincerity, Councilor Duran, I did ask for a copy of a memorandum of understanding of, that the Charlottetown City Police has with the RCMP and other police agencies, and just trying to get a better handle and understanding as to how collaboration takes place with the city police department and other police agencies across the province, and what are those operations? What are the specific types of operations that they're actively involved in? And then, of course, I asked the question about the drugs, because it doesn't go by that I get hit with, what are we doing about the drug houses? What are we doing about with the crack houses? I mean, over the weekend, I got a call from a resident, from a property owner, just purchased a property, not too far from here, sinking a lot of money into the property. He's got to go out and clean up the needles, reappointed the foundation, cleaned off all the graffiti's back again. And he's saying, I'm making a sincere, serious investment in this property. I'm trying to enhance and improve the neighborhood, and I got to deal with this. So again, my question was, over the last 3 months, how many drug charges have been laid, and how much, give me an update as to what we're doing with the drug houses and the crack houses. All based on the premise that I want my residents to have the same quality of life that exists in other parts of the city, and I won't settle till that happens.
Again, Councilor Cron, the invitation is open to
Sure,
come to the
yeah,
next meeting.
come
It's a
anytime.
standing committee. Thank you.
Come anytime, Councillor Twill.
Thank you.
But,
I just want an answer to
okay,
questions.
the memorandum of agreements with different police agencies shouldn't be too hard to get.
Okay.
Where I work, we have a terrific working relationship with the Charlottetown City Police, and we have a memorandum of understanding with our two departments. So with the Mounties or whatever, it's not a question. We'll get that to you this week probably. In question to your drug houses and charges, I think that's an operational point of view. I did have discussions with police officers, and I can't name them, but they're in the process of, it's a long, drawn-out affair where charges are laid, they have to go to court, then they're sentenced. It's a process. It doesn't work within a month or two. It takes a certain amount of time. There's also been numerous charges laid in your ward against people involved in the drug trade. So this is a process that takes a bit of time. The police are working hard with this, and I think I can get some numbers if that's what you're requesting. But it's a drawn-out affair. Things can't be worked out in 1 or 2 weeks. It's a long process. When they go to court, they're sentenced, they do their jail time, and they get out. So. If you want numbers, I'll get them to you as soon as I can.
And the standing committees, no, Councilor Twilly, you've already asked twice. Now, we have to get other councilors that have been waiting. Councilor Duffy, Councilor Ramsey.
No, I'm okay. I almost hit the button by mistake, Your Worship.
Councilor Duffy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Drong, for your report. Councillor Drong, you would probably recall that last month I questioned you about the fact that for the month of January, with 31 days in it, we only had 7 speeding tickets issued in that 31 days. So we all get questioned by our residents in our wards about the speeding factor on city streets. It's a little unnerving to us to see those figures come in where there's only 7 in a 31-day period. You told me last month that you would probably have an answer for me the next day. I thought that was a little optimistic, but have you had a chance to get some numbers? Was it a computer glitch? Was it an oversight, or what's the story behind it?
Thank you, Worship. I did talk to our deputy there, and I think I'll put him on the spot in regards to that, if he wouldn't mind. There was a number of factors in it. The police department is very busy, and I'm not going to say like 7 speeding tickets. There's a various other charges, as you can see. But if you're, picking out speeding, that's certainly a concern for the residents as well in my ward as yours. But there's a lot of traffic, you know, a lot of traffic offenses occurred, but I'll let the deputy put him on the spot if he doesn't mind.
Mind, Deputy?
Okay.
No, Your Worship, certainly speeding is a concern for police services also, and I don't think the numbers truly reflect the effort put into curbing those offenses. But particularly that month, there's a number of issues, things that hamper the enforcement efforts, including, officer safety, the ability to be visible when making a stop, making sure that that whole process is safe, limited visibility, road conditions. We don't want to create an enforcement initiative and then, by doing so, create an environment that is unsafe for people that are passing or other motorists. We're very cognizant of that, and but we're very well aware that traffic matters are at the forefront of council and constituents' minds, and we'll continue to do our best to meet that, meet those challenges of traffic in our jurisdiction.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And again, Councillor Duran, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Water and sewer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Our committee met, the report's in your package. There's no resolutions, Your Worship, but if there's any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you for your report, Councillor Cody. I touched on this last month and we didn't get to it, even at our meeting or something. Like, if there ever was a HST charge to residents out of mistake or for services or something, I'm just wondering, a person mentioned to me that he thought he did, he was charged. What is his recourse? So I said, well, I'll bring it up here, and if it ever was done by mistake or something like that, if we were charging before and not now, I'd ask if you could look at it and we could discuss it at the committee and to see where we would go with that. If any HST was charged, would we be returning it to the appropriate customer? That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Good, sir? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Twill.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Cody, for your report. I appreciate it. I wanted to ask you a question, and maybe you can direct it to the manager of water and sewer. Over the past few weeks, there's been a couple of damaging water main breaks on Queen Street. As you know, we just paved that street. The residents have been requesting for a number of years to have that street paved. I did have discussions with the manager of water and sewer, and I did state the fact that we should try to look after the infrastructure, address the infrastructure below street level. I was told that there was 8 different intervals on that particular water main where they were very precarious and not very functional, or not very effective. And what's frustrating for the neighborhood and the community, and I'm sure the traveling public, is now we're right back to where we were. I did get a chronological list of water main breaks on Queen Street from our manager, and there had to be at least 20 or more. So the question is why not replaced? Why wasn't that water main replaced so we wouldn't be going through this exercise down at Queen Street? I mean, like I said, the whole community's waited a long time for have that street paved. The contractors did a great job paving it. Now we're right back to where we were. 2 major water main breaks, and as you're driving down Queen Street, in fact, probably factor in another one with the heaving as you're passing Queen or Sparky's or the little grocery store that's there. So I don't know what we're going to do, but I think we got to be a little more proactive when it comes. If we're going to, Public Works and Water and Sewer has to get together. We've been preaching that we're going to get together, but they got to get together dealing with issues of this nature and this magnitude. So I don't know what the response is, but I said to the residents I would bring it up. Councillor Cody, maybe you can turn it over to Mr. McEwen.
Do you want to yield to the manager, or do you want to take it back? I mean, what do you wish to do?
It'd be easier if we went back to the committee, give the manager some time to,
Could you
Fair.
look into that,
and then we can,
Richard, for our next?
Sure. If you want, you can get to it.
Okay, is that all right?
sure.
So we
Yeah.
Good. Just to follow up, to him or to, you got a question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's ask the question through the chair and then he can
Okay.
answer.
Well, thank you, Mr. McEwen. So the question is, knowing that the water main pipe, from the history of that piece of infrastructure, that it is in a very precarious situation, and that there's different deficiencies within that pipe. When you're bringing recommendations forward on different infrastructure projects, was that not one of the things that was foremost in your mind? I mean, I did discuss it with you, and I did state that, we should try to do something, and it just seems like we're throwing good money after bad when we're not dealing with these situations. I mean, again, I appreciate the work that's been done, but I can tell you there's a lot of frustration out in that community saying, finally, we waited all these years to have that street paved, and now we're ripping the street up to fix these water mains.
Can you answer that, Richard?
I mean, it's unfortunate we experience water mains throughout the city, and sometimes they happen in areas where we have just, we look at the worst areas and target the worst areas first, the same way that Public Works does with the streets, they're looking at the worst areas first. We are trying to bring it together more, it is a challenge, and unfortunately, there could be a street where we haven't had a main break, and when we do have a main break, just after we pave it.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Sorry, I have to move on. I thought this meeting was gonna go quick, and we did make some changes to the agenda. So I have to leave the chair, so I'm gonna ask the deputy to take over. I'm late for another function. Hate to leave the meeting.
You have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Before you did, Councilor Creel. You had to go.
Okay, well, that concludes my report, so.
Yeah, right, yeah. That's how we do things around here, right? Yeah. Yeah, Cloud, bring that up in the advisory committee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Public Works Department and the Urban Beautification Committee met on February the 26th, 2020. The minutes are included in your packages. The Civic Board for Persons with Disabilities met on January the 14th, and their minutes are also in the package. I just have 2 items to report on very quickly, Deputy Mayor. The Capital Purchasing Program is a program that is extended to all municipalities in Canada that belong to the Federation of Mayors and Municipalities. And the Capital Purchasing Program consists mainly of mass bulk purchasing that's available to us from major manufacturers, producers in Canada. And the reason we get such a great price on the items we use, be it snow plows or fire trucks or whatever, is that we have this, all the municipalities are eligible to participate, and by buying so many things from these chosen manufacturers, we get a very good price on it. It also has the added feature of once the contract for the particular product or service has been signed off, the local vendor within our municipality is the one who does the delivery and shares in the profits in that. So it's not one of these programs where we run off to a national or a provincial capital in some other province and the profits stay there. So we benefit by a very good competitive price, and our vendors in our municipalities benefit also from the purchase we make. The staff and the committee see this as a great improvement for our purchasing power, and our budget should reflect savings in many ways. So this is a pilot project that we'll be embarking on, and the staff and the committee will be reviewing it at the end of the upcoming fiscal year, the end of the 2021 fiscal year. So that's good news for everyone, including our local suppliers here. The only other item I'd like to bring to the attention of council is the request for proposal approval for engineering services. This is the group that we have retained to go out and get design and prep work for some large projects we have coming up throughout the city. There's projects such as the large wooden creosote culverts, working on the intersections over at Great George Street and at the 1911 jail that have required some lighting and some rework. Also the short street that's going to connect Towers Road with Spencer Drive. That's been in the works. And there's a couple of more streets in that category. The advantage to grouping these large projects and turning them over to one firm to go out and get the design services from one firm at one time, we see it as saving a lot of money in the long run, rather than doing it in a piecemeal fashion that has been done in years gone by. That's all I have to report tonight, Your Worship. I think I have 4 resolutions for your consideration. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Durand.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 quick questions, Councillor Duffy. I'm glad you talked about the engineering. You know, I asked about it last month, and I'm wondering if I could get some data, I guess, from your department, that once we go out and do some engineering work, you know, it's brought up to me time and time again, well, they were here, they put posts out, there was somebody looking at the crosswalk or the ditch, and now it just goes away, and it's 2, 3, 4 years later, and the work never comes back. And they said, well, how come you sent somebody out and you found that it was good enough or a big enough concern to send someone out to do engineering work, but you're not coming back to do the actual work? So what I'm asking is could I have, you know, especially on Elizabeth Drive, I've told these people, and Centennial Drive, about the sidewalk for the safety for the seniors, and you know, I'm not getting an answer, and I see their RFPs for this month, and you know, they're calling me saying, well, how come we didn't make it? And I said, well, I'll ask if I can get some data on if it was engineered, if it did get engineered, and when you're coming to do it, you know, hopefully. The second one is the traffic lights on Pine and Maple. It was a concern we started last summer. It was looked at the Police and Public Works. I think the manager here looked at it with his engineering background. So the people are asking me, you know, are we going to get it? Is it coming? I said it's back ordered, but they keep asking me, well, when? So I said, okay, I'll ask it tonight, and hopefully I can get 2 answers on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durand. I'll just begin with the design work that has been carried out in various places where the actual work on the land hasn't been completed. I'll ask Mr. Adams if that would be a problem for him to give you a listing or a copy or a description of the work that has been designed but not completed. On the second item, it brings to mind that the fact you talk about the traffic lights at the corner on the stop signs at the corner of Maple and Pine. I would advise you to maybe contact one of your residents who responded to a planning issue that we had talked about earlier here tonight, and he told me in the letter, or he told everyone in the letter, in my copy of the letter, so I guess it's everybody's copy of the letter, that he was talking about traffic on Pine Drive at the time, but he was telling everyone via this letter that traffic lights are going in at Pine and Maple. I think if you, Councillor Durand, give him a little call and to explain to him that they're not traffic lights going on in, they're little red, for the sake of
Signs, yeah.
the size of a golf ball that sit on the top of a stop sign to draw attention to it. I assume, Mr. Adams, those have been on order. I can turn that over to you. I'm not involved in that aspect of life.
Correct, Your Worship, yeah, so essentially we do have the lights, but there's a special hardware to attach them to our Telstar on top of it. The ones that we need were on back order, they're supposed to be ordered, I'll follow up this week on where they are, but as soon as they get here, they will be installed, yes.
That'd be great. Just got to give them something. You know, we've been working on it for a few months now, and you know, I knew if I asked it here, it'd be answered, so I can go back and tell them. And under no certain terms have I ever discussed with anyone that there's traffic lights going in on Pine and Maple. There was always just these little tiny lights to make the stop signs more visible. So if he did send an email and I didn't read it and he thinks there is, then I'll certainly give him a call. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Council, we got 2 more reports and 5 resolutions, and we've got about 8 minutes left before we hit that 3-hour mark. There's one more question, Councillor Duffy, from Councillor Twill.
Thank you for the report, Councillor Duffy. Approached by a constituent, actually 2, and in fact I got another call again today. Guy really tore a strip out of me. with regards to the engineering design work on the road from the Towers Road to Spencer Drive. And the concern is that they don't believe that it's gonna help with the traffic flow. I talked to the CAO as well today. They don't believe that the traffic flow is going to be enhanced or improved in any which way, shape, or form by taking over that road, which is owned by the mall, and the city doing the design work and spending the monies to expand running parallel to the rails to trails, which would eventually connect to Spencer Drive. So they're wondering why we're not running Spencer Drive all the ways to Mount Everett Road. And I explained to them that there's a lot of opposition from the residents that live on Ash Drive. They're not interested in handling that traffic flow. They anticipate an increase in an intense amount of traffic coming through that particular area. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the answer is, but they're not enthusiastic, not very enthusiastic. I had a conversation with one constituent on Saturday morning, got a text message from another constituent, and then today I got nailed again, saying, you know, what are you doing? And I said, it's not that simple. It's not that simple to extend Spencer Drive out to Mount Everett Road. So what I'm asking is, whether it be yourself or Mr. Adams, is there any other options besides an expenditure of the engineering design work and expending? I think the expenditure, when that work rolls around, you're talking $500,000, and we haven't even addressed the multi-purpose pathway. So is there any other options that we could explore besides going down, pardon the pun, going down this road?
Thank you, Councillor Tweel. By the way, I thought you were supposed to be going early tonight.
Pardon? I did, but I was challenged by the mayor, so I thought I'd stick around. I changed my plans.
Okay. I can just give you a quick answer. I know the deputy's on the hot spot here. Very quick answer. If you go from the bottom of Towers Road over to Spencer Drive, if you get a city map and you can drop a couple off to these individuals, there is no street that connects the bottom of Towers Road to Spencer Drive. What you'll see is asphalt, but that belongs to the Towers Mall. You'll see all of a sudden it's Towers Road stops and Spencer's Road is over here. We've got to get a city street between those two roads, and that's the answer for him. Now, as far as Ash down to Spencer Road onto what we call the Peter Pan corner, that's for another day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. First resolution, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Worship, moved by Councillor Duffy, second by Councillor Bernard, that the following resolution of October 9th, 2018 be rescinded. That per the publicly advertised request for quotations for overhead door replacements, Ken Street Spire, the low submission of island overhead doors in the amount of $6,105.88, all taxes included, per door be accepted. This expenditure has been previously approved in the 2018-19 capital budget, and that the mayor and CEO hereby authorized to execute any standard contract agreements to implement this resolution.
Question?
There's a question called. All in favor? Those opposed? Okay. Motion carried 9-0. Thank you.
Your Worship, moved by Councillor Duffy, second by Councillor Bernard, that per the publicly advertised request for quotations for overhead door replacements, Ken Street Fire Station 2020, the low submission of island overhead doors in the amount of $72,964.05, all taxes included, be accepted, and that this expenditure has been previously approved in the 2021 capital budget, and further that the mayor and CEO are hereby authorized to execute any standard contract agreements to implement this resolution, Your Worship.
Question?
Could you just stand
No, he didn't. Yeah, that's why I'm not in conflict.
Sorry.
Councillor Drawn?
Question?
Oh, my.
Call.
Oh,
He's taking over.
Sorry. We're getting those opposed?
Oh, I got a favorite up there. Oh, dear.
We're all getting tired now.
Councillor, there we go. Motion's carried 9-0. Thank you.
Your worship, moved by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Bernard, that as per the conditions of the request for proposal for engineering services, various capital projects, the submission of EXP Services, Inc., an amount of $236,833.30, all taxes included, be accepted, and that this expenditure has been approved in the 2019-2020 capital budget and dated March 6, 2019, and the 2021 capital budget dated February 6, 2020, and further that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute any standard contract agreements to implement this resolution, Your worship.
Seeing no
Question
no
call?
questions, all in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried 8-1.
Moved by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Bernard, that the 2021 capital budget only for the Public Works Department, in coordination with the Finance Department, have approval to use a capital purchasing program as a purchasing option available to the city through the Federation of Prince Edward Island Municipalities, FPEIM, and that the mayor and CEO are hereby authorized to issue any standard contract agreements to implement this resolution.
Seeing no questions, all in favor? Those opposed? Motion's carried 9-0. Thank you. Does that conclude your report,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Moving on to economic.
I'll put a motion on the floor that we extend till we're done.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Councillor.
carry on.
Second by
All in
Councillor
favor.
McLeod, all in favor? Okay, so we have 2/3. Thank you, Council. Okay, we'll move on to economic development, tourism, Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Economic Development, Tourism, and Events Management Committee met February 11th. The open minutes are in your draft, or the minutes are in your package. Charlottetown Arts Advisory Board met February 10th. The minutes are also included. I'd like to have just say 2 or 3 highlights that are coming up. The Jack Frost Winterfest went extremely well again this year, and I'd like to a huge thank you to Laurel, Wayne, and Charlotte for putting the weekend in and working along with that crew. And in March, we'll be hosting the U Sports Canadian Women's Hockey Championship and the Canadian Firefighters Curling Championship, which is here. Like the U Women's Sports starts, I believe, Thursday, Wayne? And then I think the firemen's shortly after that. Yeah. If I have any questions or anything, I would be entertain them. Thank you.
Councillor Ramsey. Seeing no questions. Oh, sorry.
Surprise?
Councillor Creel.
Thank you for your report, Councillor Ramsey. You talked about the Jack Frost. Can we get a report from the organization, the Capital Cities Committee, that overseeing the Jack Frost Festival? Can we get an analytical report from that organization as to a full disclosure of how the event unfolded and what the strengths and the weaknesses are and advantages, disadvantages? Just, you know, a report that they would have themselves. Can we get access to that report and maybe even bring in some representatives from that committee to meet with our committee?
As we do with every event and everything we do, Councillor Creel, as you know, you're on that committee with me, is that we will get the staff, and the staff will all get together once the event is over, and they all have a brain trust, and we get together, and they'll bring back the reports to us, what was good, what was bad, what failed, what we can improve on, but we're certainly looking under that, Laurel and Wayne. Do you want to speak on it?
Mr. Chair, as with any event, final reports are submitted as per protocol that we have as a funding partner of the event. But as a reminder to the city, the event is owned by Capital City Events Inc., not the city corporation.
We're only a partner in it.
Councillor Creel, a follow-up question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So with that said, and I know we have our representatives here from the Economic Development Committee, I wouldn't mind inviting the chair of that committee as well, invite him in, because I'd like to ask him a few questions as well to our committee meeting. Thank you. Chair of the, what do you call it, Wayne? The Capital Cities? Yeah.
I'll
Bring
certainly
them
take
in.
that under advisement.
Bring them in.
Take that under advisement.
That concludes your report?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to Council Advisory Committee, which is Councillor McLeod.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Council Advisory Committee met on February 28th, and the draft minutes are in the package. I have one resolution for council's consideration, and I'll try to answer any questions I can.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duran.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for your report, Councilor McLeod. Last month I asked about an update regarding the number of committees that were being reduced as per the consultant's report. I never noticed anything in the minutes. I was wondering if your committee had time to talk about it or where that's going. Thank you.
Yes, that was in progress. It hasn't, we haven't really finished it, Councillor Durant. It's gone back to the committee to further discuss. We ran out of time, so. And also, I think you also asked on the terms of reference for the council advisory, I think, as well. So, again, it was discussed because the terms of reference was in a closed session, but I can tell you, if you look at the terms of reference for the procedural bylaws, page 13, section 42, tells you what council advisory is responsible for, but we did discuss that we would put it more in a point form like all the other terms of reference, so to make it a little more easier to find it if necessary. But it is in the procedural bylaw what our terms of reference is. Yeah, it's page 13, section 42.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So we go by the procedural bylaw, right? Like the MGA, does that override? Like there's procedural bylaws that specifically points out what to do in certain situations. So do we start from A and go to Z, or, you know, or does the MGA come in? That's, you know, I wasn't sure about that. Like,
Okay.
where does the procedural bylaw supersede the MGA, or do the MGA supersede the procedural bylaw?
I'm not a total expert, but I'm pretty sure that the MGA gives municipalities within each municipality has the jurisdiction to create their own set of bylaws, as long as it's fitting within the provincial bylaws. So our bylaws are contingent of what's the province says we're allowed to do and what we can't do, and with some flexibility on the bylaws, because what works for us in Charlotte might not work in a smaller community. So there is some flexibility in there, and I believe if Mr. Kelly, you might want to second that if I haven't said that correctly, but I'm pretty sure that's, so everything that we're doing is in the MGA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the councillor is correct that the MGA is the main document, but under the MGA, we are to put a procedure bylaw in the place as per the MGA.
Okay, so I'll look up the procedural bylaw to give me the terms of reference. I'm just trying to get a handle on a procedural bylaw. There's steps that you have to take, and I'm just wanting to make sure that we take the proper steps when we're looking at them. But that's great. Thank you for that, and I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Councillor McLeod, I wonder if you could take this under advisement, do a little research for me. I'd like to get a chronological list of all the meetings this new council has held, and do a comparison and contrast with the number of meetings that were held by previous councils. I know I've talked to a lot of the councillors and even some of the city staff, and the question is, why are we having all these extra meetings compared to previous years? Why is there such a surge? You know, is it necessary? Is it unnecessary? Calling special committee meetings of council when they could be those resolutions could be dealt with here at the regular monthly meeting, as opposed to having these, you know, what do you call them, Tuesday special, or all these other sidebar meetings. So could you please take that back to your advisory committee and do the research and find out if these particular extra meetings are necessary or they're unnecessary?
Thank you very much for your question, and certainly we will bring it back, and it's all part of the bigger picture that we are approaching as far as all committees and structure, yeah, and going back within regards to the MGA as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. So you'll do that, John?
Yeah.
Your Worship, moved by Councillor McLeod, second by Councillor Duffy, that Myron McKay be reappointed to the Charlottetown Airport Authority Board of Directors as recommended by the Council Advisory Committee, Your Worship.
Okay, question called.
Questions called, all in favor? Those opposed?
Okay.
Carried 9-0. Thank you. That concludes your report, Councilor McLeod.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Say the famous words.
We have a motion to adjourn. Moved
Oh,
by
yeah.
Councilor Barrett, second by Councilor McKay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
Pulling the name out of
But you know what I mean?
I thought we were gonna pull one of the names out of the hat.
Yeah, no,
To deal with the
Mercy, that was like intense.
Yeah.
Dave Stewart, I finally spoke and you didn't take my shout out, you big Rudy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry.